well, let's call this meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. As long as I don't trip.
July 15th.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll roll.
Councilmember Lane,
Here.
Councilmember Lewis,
Here.
Councilmember Whitmer,
Yep.
Vice Mayor DeGolia,
Yeah.
Mayor Holland.
Okay,
So
they're all here. We have a presentation to start from. Yeah. You guys ready?
he is.
Hi.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. I'm Margaret McNiven with the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District. I'm on the Board of Directors. And thank you for this opportunity to present the district to you. Mid-Penn is a special district, and it was formed by voters back in 1972. And I wanted to just read the mission to you because it's a very special mission for this area.
But there's something happening with her.
Yeah.
Sounds scratchy.
Let's see if we can we test this one?
Oh, no audio. No.
It's just the microphone.
It's a little scratchy sounding. Okay, try again.
Okay.
There, that's better.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Mid-Penn's mission is to acquire and preserve a regional
Sounds good.
That's
Much
good.
better.
a regional green belt of open space land in perpetuity to protect and restore the natural environment and to provide opportunities for ecologically sensitive public enjoyment and education. We have extended our boundaries out to the coast, and for the coast area, it's a little different rules apply. And on the coast, Mid-Penn has an expanded mission to acquire and preserve agricultural land of regional significance, preserve rural character, and encourage viable agricultural uses of the land. All right, next slide, please. It's not quite. Let's go to the next one. It's not quite in the middle of the screen. Lands we protect. There you go. Yeah. Just to give you an idea of where the protected land is, that is the bay carved out in the Pacific coast. And all the dark green lands are the 72,000 acres that Mid-Penn now owns. And the light green is protected lands by the state, the counties, by the federal government, and by nonprofit organizations such as Post. Okay, next slide, please. Let's see, yeah. This is the boundaries with just showing you how it's divided up into wards. They're called wards. The collective us, are Ward 6, which is San Mateo County mostly. And it looks the biggest one, but all those wards have got the same number of people. And they just had to kind of gerrymander it to give us that little strip up to the bay so that we got our full 110,000 people. But there's a lot of open space in San Mateo. And next slide, please. To date, there's 7,400 acres of redwood forest. It's a very diverse, very biodiverse state, California, especially in this area. So we have 7,400 acres of redwood forests, 6,900 acres of grasslands, 40 acres of serpentine grasses, and some other special stuff, but it's very diverse. Next, please. Well, I'll give you the facts, but that is the board of directors there, looking very official. So we, the vote went to when they went to the voters, it was by a grassroots. It wasn't dictated by anybody. They're just a bunch of wonderful people in the county, in the area that wanted to protect the land. And so they decided that having taxpayer fund, by having a, Mid-Penn is paid for through the taxes on our property taxes. So, so it's got a good source of funding. And there's the 72,000 acres, as I said, and 260 miles of trails and 15,000 acres of grazing lands. Preserves are free, open to the public every day of the year. Next, please. I thought I'd just show you some preserves that you guys could go to from around here. Next. Ravenswood, this is our open space preserved by the bay, and it's really worth a visit. Yeah. Next. Redwoods are coming up. El Corte Madera up on Skyline. Next. La Honda open space with its grasslands and that iconic red barn. And next, Redwoods, Purissima Redwoods. And the Purissima Redwoods is eventually going to go all the way down to the ocean. So it'll be a nice hike from the ocean up to Skyline. All right. Beg your pardon?
Beautiful picture.
Aren't they? I agree. Windy Hill, everybody knows Windy Hill. And yeah, it's every bit as beautiful as the rest of them. Okay, so we don't only acquire and preserve land. Mid-Penn has a lot of projects that they do. Let's move on to the next slide. Wildland fire, a big issue in the Bay these days, in the Bay Area. I think all this happened during the CZU fire 6 years ago. And the rangers were really useful in helping. Well, let's do the next slide. What it did was because the rangers were just called out to all these properties to help fight fires, there is now a program in place, and it's what we call a four-pronged approach we take to fire. Starting at the bottom, we have maps of the neighborhoods, and if there's a fire in the middle of nowhere, mostly our rangers will know how to get there. So that's a useful thing, pre-fire and advisor maps. We also have a vegetation management plan that's at the top, where we remove the vegetation that is fire, a source of fuel, and we do it ecologically. I think that's what I wanted you to know, is we don't just go chop the trees down. There's been people now understand that too many trees is not necessarily a good thing, but you want to keep the certain ones. You want to keep the natives and the grasses. And so then we also have a prescribed fire plan. This is very much in its infancy. We've only done a couple. It's has to be done very carefully, but we have done a couple. And there is a monitoring plan, so we can follow up, see what went wrong, see what went right, and so on and so forth. And that picture on the left is the severity of fire hazard in San Mateo County. Very high is pink and pretty high is yellow. Next. All our lands. That's prescribed burns. You can ask me if you are interested. And our rangers there, we have 2 fire crews on staff, and they know what they're doing, so always feel safe. Next. We've done a community shaded fuel break in La Honda, which is, we just went in and cut down a ton of eucalyptus, and it not only looks good, you can see it looks good, I think. It's not just a forest. And so, yeah, we send biologists out to make sure that, well, just to monitor, this happens to me sometimes, to make an inventory of the plants, and also to make sure there's no birds that we're cutting down their homes. So it's all done in a very ecological way. Next, please. Recently there are some preserves that you can go to that if you have an ADA problem, so they're relatively flat, you don't have to climb a hill. And so we have recently improved the ADA access with nice little trail that's at San Antonio, Rancho San Antonio on the right. And the one in the middle with the picnic table, with the benches, overlooks Horseshoe Lake up on Skyline. So you can go from the parking lot in your wheelchair if you have to, but certainly with a cane, and just sit and enjoy. And there's the rather ugly but necessary parking spaces on the left. Okay, next. Please. One of the things we did was we held a conservation career fair in Los Altos, and 1,000 people signed up for it. And we got at least 800 people came. All these young kids interested in getting a job out in the outdoors and working to help the environment. So that was the first one in 2026, and it got a lot of rave reviews. Next.
Incredible.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was crazy. Yeah. We have some education programs. We have a great education program specialist. And let's see, I don't know if you know Daniel's Nature Center up at Skyline, where it looks up to a pond, and there's a little museum of animals in there. And yeah, the kids love to go and run around. And Spaces and Species, that is a program that the Rangers have put together to encourage kids to come and study the environment and the plants, and just get them outdoors. And there's just a picture of a docent-led hike there too. So next, please. We're moving along. We have a very good docent program. If ever you want to go on one, you'll learn a lot about the local flora and fauna. They're very knowledgeable, and they love working with groups, going out and, just showing the public what we have up there. Next. So we do a lot of this stuff in conjunction with our partners, our youth-led partners. There is Save by Nature and Latino Outdoors. And that on the left at the bottom is a group of kids they're teaching to make trails. It's a conservation corps. And they'll, maybe go on to be mid-pen interns. So the Rangers really seem to enjoy going out with the kids out in the preserves. Next. This is a slide. This is part of our natural resources. You know, in the Bay Area here, we have we cut the animals off. The animals from the East Bay can't really get over to the peninsula because of the roads. There's a lot of places where they just get hit by cars. So one of the things that's happening, and it's getting to be a bigger, getting more state support, is to put wildlife linkages across the roads. So as you can see, our lands there, this Highway 17, how did the poor animals get across without being hit just by sheer luck? So the Santa Cruz Land Trust has done one on Highway 17, and we are almost to the point where we can do another one on 17. So if right in that area with the red, where it says mountain there. So if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, this is the part of Highway 17 where we're going to open up a culvert. Culvert's already there, but it's not big enough for the animals won't go through that. Plus it's got a little turn in it. So they're going to start working on that they're going to go under the Highway 17, and that is right by Lexington Reservoir. So the animals will come down from the sort of skyline area and then go under, and I mean, we hope. The one that the Santa Cruz Land Trust did has had a mountain lion go through it. It's a big deal. One got through without being killed. It's really nice. So that's the undercrossing. At the same time, if you go to the next slide, we're going to do an overcrossing for hikers. So the area to the right is Sierra Azul. It's miles of open trails, and the area to the left goes up to Skyline, and the Ridge Trail goes right there. But if you want to go from one side to the other hiking, you pretty much have to stop and drive and go to the other side. So there's a nice design for a overcrossing, which will be pretty exciting. So expensive, yes. So next slide. We're actually in the design phase. Caltrans is obviously basically in charge of all that. You know, we have to report everything to Caltrans. And so right now we're doing estimates and specifications. And then next year, they're going to start the bidding and the construction phase. And VTA, Valley Transport Authority, you have to have it's a federal highway, so you have to have a federal organization to submit the paperwork. Oh, paperwork, it's amazing. And they are planning on going out to bid next year. And the money, the federal government's going to give us some. We've got some from Measure AA, and we're applying for grants for the rest of it. So fingers crossed, we will have an overcrossing by whenever, but it's moving closer. Next, please. This is sort of a sad issue. They discovered that at Rancho San Antonio, there are coyotes and mangy animals, and they pinpointed it to people using rodenticides to get rid of the rats and mice in their the adjacent neighbors. So they're having a outreach program right now to really encourage people not to use the poisons because it really affects the animals. If a rat dies from poisoning and an animal eats it, the poison goes into them. So it's really sad, but they're really working on an outreach program for that. Next, please. Well, the Honda Creek Preserve opened in the fall with 6 new miles of trails. They go straight up the hill. I've walked down them, but not up them. But I'll tell you, it's beautiful. Mid-Penn does good trails. So if you ever feel like a good workout, well, you can go from the bottom to the top. There's a better parking area at the bottom. You need a permit if you want to start from the top and come down. Next. Oh, okay. So visit a preserve and get involved. And you can go to our website, which is on the next slide, I believe. Openspace.org. Up in the right there, there's an events calendar, or you can volunteer if you feel like pulling French broom. That's always available. And yeah, I think there's one more slide. There's a QR code. And this is the staff, there's about 220 of them. One of which is my colleague here. Alex. And any questions?
Yeah, very nice.
Well, it's
Very thorough.
I can say that I've been on bikes on it. It was just really.
Oh, you went to Russian Ridge and saw the wildflower. Pretty spectacular if you catch it right. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming.
thank you for your time.
Wonderful. Keep
Yeah.
up the good work.
Pardon me?
Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, so now moving on to public comment. This is for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Is there any comment? See any in the room? Okay, is there any disclosure of ex parte communications?
And
None. Okay, departmental written reports. And on a pull for discussion. Is there public comment on?
Another great job.
A great job. Okay. We don't have to approve these, right?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Do.
well,
No.
the consent.
Departmental
Oh, no,
report.
yeah, no.
Last time I got called out for not doing public comment on the departmental reports and it's made me question my confidence as running this meeting effectively. Okay. So now we are moving on to the consent agenda, which is items 1 through 5. Is there any items anyone want to pull or
Nope.
comment? Do we have any public comment for items 1 through 5?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar, items 1 through.
Okay, we have a
I'll
motion.
second it.
Bill has a second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to our regular agenda. We have 3 items on the agenda. Are you guys okay? I think we were gonna have a decent amount of public comment. But the third item have contractors here to talk to us, I think. So they can leave and not
Anything to get rid of it.
Paying
get
them-
out of here.
paying
If
them
we're
by the
paying them
hour
by the
for-
hour, let's get them out of
Get
here.
them out of here.
So are you guys okay? So let's move to item 8 first.
Well, if
Which-
they know a lot about pickleball, they could say.
I know, unless they want to stay for the pickleball conversation, but item
Pay
8
for that.
is so let's do 8 first and then move on to pickleball. So that is the Upper Atherton Channel Stabilization Project. Robert, it's just your show, this whole
Right.
agenda, so Want to switch?
I'm here for you, so.
Okay.
Oh, good.
It's at your pleasure. We're happy to go either way. So if you'd like to move forward with number 8, we're happy to do that. So before you tonight, we're asking council to receive an update on the Upper Atherton Channel Stabilization Project and approve amendments to the professional services agreements that we have with Tetra Tech and with Capital Program Management, who's helping us manage the project. And so as we've been moving through the process of, I think you received a presentation last year on kind of what the conceptual designs were. We move forward to get that to the 50% level and talk with the regulatory agencies. And as we've had those conversations with them, the scope is kind of expanded and they are requiring more of us. And so with that, we have Tetra Tech prepared a contract amendment for you to approve tonight in the amount of, I think, 670,000 and change. And so we're here. We have a presentation ready if you want to see it. But other than that, we're just seeking the approval of the contract amendments.
Okay. Do you guys want, I'm okay without seeing.
I
Have any
reviewed
questions?
everything with George and I'm okay with it.
Same here.
Okay, great.
I'm sure.
Yes. So do
I
you
just-
want to
I have-
ask questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How many of us here on council has actually walked the channel recently?
Not all of
First elected.
Well, I know, I meant, well, yes, from going up to the top
Mm.
and kind of
Down to Los.
in the valley, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's really important. I mean, this is
Yeah.
Oh,
really
yeah.
important. And what we're talking about here is when it overtops its edges, and fortunately, we haven't had a huge rainstorm like New Year's Eve of 2025,
Five.
yeah, when it was there and I went up there and there was water everywhere.
Yeah.
And, it's really something that we have to pay attention to.
And Phil Lively.
I'm glad we're looking at it. And Phil Lively took me up there when I first got on council and he says, and it was in the rain. He loved it. Showed me
When he took you out, that was the best time.
the best time to see it in action.
You
And
probably, and we went as a,
yes,
probably do that again.
that was a long time ago. Yeah. So that's why I
Yeah.
said
Diana
recently.
and I went. Oh, it's great. We can go
Anyway,
again. Okay, so do we have any public comment on this where we do our actual comment? Obviously, that was a question. Okay, any comments? Good.
yeah.
In staff report, there's a couple of places where it references a retaining wall bench. I just wonder, what is,
The bench is, so the retaining wall is more or less is proposed to be more or less vertical. And so rather than having the slope start right at the top of the wall, having a flat area of a couple feet or so before you start grading up so that you can plant stuff and have a little bit of drainage collection for the water that comes down before it overtops.
It's not
So
a
it's just
bench
a
for us
short,
to
it's
sit
a
on.
short, flat area before the slope begins.
Bench to sit on.
Now I have a question. It talked about state wanting some riparian type environment, that would mean taking property of our residents, right? And that is a question.
Yeah, so we're in the process of working with the regulatory agencies. They want the channel to be as natural as possible. And we'd like to do that with some constraints. We'd like to make sure that the channel is stable enough, because if it's all soft, as water goes, things will erode. So we want to make sure that at least the bottom section is protected. And there's a desire, like I said, by the regulatory agencies to widen and make it more open. Our goal is to try and keep it as close to the easement as we can. But that's going to be a negotiation process with the regulatory agencies. And so as we move forward with that, we'll come back with kind of what that footprint looks like.
So just to follow up on question, which is the right thing to inquire. I think there's two issues that could have an impact on residents along channel. One is the widening because, and I saw the report that the agencies would like it more riparian and wider, less vertical. And as you make it more wider, that obviously has a risk of going beyond the easement that we have. And how we deal with that, how we could address their issue, not sure. That requires some maybe adjustment to the easement.
Yeah.
And the other item is not having it be concrete, right? Make it more riparian, so it's more like the creek, which I assume a dirt surface. And how does that work?
So for the dirt, I'm going to say for the softer surface, it would be earthen with plantings and other things to try and hold that together. And
Plantings like
it,
what, reeds or
um,
creek
I'll,
plants?
I'll say general planting, there's going to be different types of planting material. It's going to require planting and irrigation to establish. But the idea would be that as the roots grow, they kind of hold it together. But if there's too much water running, it's still going to scour it away. And that's where our concern about having it completely soft. We want to harden that bottom so that most of the heavy flow, most of the flows are contained within that hardened area. That lessens the risk of erosion and settling and stuff. Following on your other portion, if we're able to constrain that bottom, we're able to maybe do some layback at the top without going too far. And the modeling that we've done is if we did a complete layback, we'd lose portions of Walsh Road and things that really aren't appropriate. And so that's where we're doing what we have to do is an alternatives analysis showing the impacts of different configurations. And that'll be shared with the regulatory agencies to get their buy-in on hopefully some sort of, I'll call it middle ground, where we're protecting the bottom, minimizing the extent to which we're either A, going outside the easement or asking residents to allow us to do work outside the easement. And most of the flows would stay within that area. The conversations that we had with property owners, because we reached out to a few when the agency said lay it back, was they weren't really happy with the idea of completely laying it back. But the few that we talked to said, well, if you're able to make the bottom vertical, we can maybe live with a little bit of expansion on the upper end. And I say a little bit, not like,
So
super wide.
just to follow up, there's sort of three different levels. There's the bottom. I understand you want that to be hard, so the water will flow all the way. And there's the sides, and my concern on the sides is if you were planting new plant material, when the
Let me
water
rephrase.
comes
When I
down,
say the
that's gonna
bottom,
wash.
when I say the bottom, I mean like the
Understood.
first 3 feet of height, right? So it's not just the bottom, but it's the bottom sides as well. And that way that main flow area is constrained in an area that's not going to just erode away. Hopefully that clarifies a little better.
But it can also clog things up too, too much. I think, Mr. Wood.
So seem logical to me. The channel meanders down currents, okay, that in some cases erode, in other cases displace stuff. That could be the material that you have in the vary throughout the channel, correct? Or is it going to be consistent? Bottom part, and then as you move up, are you actually going to look at as channel goes, water would be rushing into the side of a channel, harder material?
I'd say we
what they're
have the
planning on
engineers
doing?
here to answer, but I'm going to try. Is that the intent is to make sure that those areas that are going to be hit harder, have more scour potential, be hardened. And for those areas that we maybe have a little more flexibility, that's going to be that negotiation with the regulatory agency and allow that to maybe be a little softer. We are currently looking at other materials that may allow for a more vertical side, but maybe stable enough to kind of hold together without scouring away.
Because in many of the cases, they have these, that look like cement bags that threw down there and they got wet and then they hardened.
Unfortunately, we're not allowed to do that anymore. So one of the things, so we actually went on site with the regulatory agencies and we talked about different types of structures. The first thing is that when they saw those items, they say, we don't permit those anymore. So we can't just replace in kind with a lot of the structures that are out there. And then we were looking at what we call gabion walls, which are kind of I'll call it rock wrapped in like chain link fence material that can be stacked and are heavy and stable and can deal with a scour. Riprap is just the big boulders. And so they were not happy with the gabion walls. And so we're migrating on to whether we can do riprap, which is the big rocks, but kind of cemented in so they don't float away in the heavier storms, or other structural walls at the bottom. But again, we're going to be going through, part of this is going through that alternatives analysis and working with the regulatory agencies to find something that is permittable, that we can live with in terms of its long-term durability.
The design will come back, council.
Definitely.
And go to the residents
Yeah.
before. So today we're just approving more budget because this is
We'll have to finish it,
complicated
yeah.
and they have more work than they anticipated. So we have to, all we're being asked today is, are we okay with them?
So I have a question based on that then. So how likely is the amount going to change when we find out more as we go through the process? Is it going to likely go up from there?
I'm going to say, we're asking for an increase in their budget, and it includes a variety of scope of work, including the additional analyses and some environmental work, cultural resource investigation, and other items that are, I'll call them known needs at this time from the regulatory agencies based on what the conversation was. We have sufficient budget in the capital improvement program account, so we're not asking for more appropriation. It's just the authorization on the contracts.
Okay.
Yep.
Questions?
I'm having flashbacks. 1984, I was on the Pleasant Hill Planning Commission, and I learned all this vocabulary then. There was a group called Focus, which is Friends of Creeks and Urban Settings. And we went all through this, and so I'm having twitchy flashbacks.
Okay.
We're happy to hear if they have any advice on how to get through.
So you want a motion?
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the upload channel stabilization project and the amendments to the professional services agreement with Tetra Tech for additional design, cultural resource, environmental, and regulatory support services that are necessary to meet the requirements of the permitting agencies for the Upper Atherton Channel Stabilization Project, and approve Capital Program Management, Inc. for additional project management support through September 27.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, now moving back to item 6. Let's talk
Anthony, I said aye too.
pickleball. Robert's back.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So we're asking you to review the pickleball program at Holbrook Palmer Park and provide some direction to staff with regards to any changes you'd like to implement. we started our pickleball trial back, I think, in January of 2024. And it has been, I'll call it successful. There's a lot of people that have come and been using our facilities and are happy that we have them. And they want more time available, and more ability to play. Last year, the council approved an increase in available pickleball hours to include all day Sunday, and then authorized staff to restripe the courts from 2 courts to 4 courts. And so that was completed in October of last year. So now we have 4 overstriped courts on top of court number 1. The current hours are until noon daily. Evenings available for pickleball reservations on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, and then all day Sunday. To accommodate the desire for more pickleball reservation availability, Player Capital Tennis has actually been monitoring the reservations on court 1 with regards to tennis use. And when the court hasn't been reserved 24 hours in advance, they've kind of flipped it over to be reservable by pickleball. At the last Park and Rec meeting, the Park and Rec Committee discussed the pickleball program and opportunities to potentially expand availability. And that included discussion of additional hours, the potential conversion of the clay court into a hard court, which could allow for more usage of the clay court and thereby opening up the court number 1 for pickleball, and then also the conversion of the handball court. Following that discussion, the recommendation from the committee with regards to hours was not to necessarily adjust the hours of availability, but to work with Player Capital to see whether they can adjust the reservation system so that instead of 24 hours in advance, doing that switch over to about 3 or 4 days. And so taking a look at the reservation system 3 or 4 days in advance, and if there's no reservations for tennis, flipping it over to pickleball. They were supportive of the conversion of the clay court to a hard court, but didn't make any recommendation on funding. That was with that's with the purview of the council. And then the conversion, they were also supportive of continuing support for the conversion of the handball court to pickleball. The recommendation on that, though, was to have that be privately funded. And so with that, if you have any questions, I'm available to answer, but we're looking for any sort of feedback and direction you might have on that. If the recommendation is to create a capital project to do improvements, then we'd ask that you appropriate the necessary funds, and we would augment the capital improvement program to include a project as appropriate.
Okay. Questions before we take public comment?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I think I heard you say that reservation system up to 24 hours or 3 days in advance of when you play. Is that question on that is is that really feasible? I thought people kind of just joined up or
So
got inspired and wanted to go.
all of our courts are reservation based. So Player Capital Tennis manages a reservation system. We sell keys to our residents and outsiders that want to use the court facilities. By purchasing a key, they get access to that reservation system. You log online and say, I want to reserve court number 2 on Tuesday from 4 to 5 p.m. And you reserve that court for your use. Court 1 being dual use, during certain hours, you can reserve court 1 for tennis. During the pickleball hours, court 1 for tennis is closed and courts 1 through 4 for pickleball are open for reservation. So similarly, on Tuesday evening at 5 o'clock. Somebody can come in and reserve pickleball court numbers 1 through 4, one of the pickleball courts for playing pickleball. And what we're saying is that outside of the fixed hours for pickleball, Player Capital Tennis has been taking it off of the tennis side and moving the reservations over to the pickleball side. Right? So on Wednesday afternoon, which is not a pickleball time period, if nobody has reserved that court for tennis, the day before, Michael would move it over to be available for pickleball. Okay? So the recommendation from the Park and Rec Committee is, rather than looking at it the day before, look at it 3-4 days before, and if nobody's used it, shift it over.
Has that 24-hour period been people making
On occasion,
reservations?
like I said, the reality is that people want to play when they want to play, and the time that things are available may or may not line up with that. But the more that Player Capital is able to shift things over, hopefully that helps accommodate some of those needs.
Just as a liaison to the committee, I have to add to it. The 1 day in advance is a challenging issue for pickleball players because people like to plan. And it would be much more convenient if the court weren't reserved for tennis during a time that court one is available for tennis. That if it hasn't been reserved 4 days in, then it would, the recommendation from Park and Rec is to make Michael then to make it available to pickleball players. So they have more time in advance to be able to.
Is it either or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like for those 4 days, then tennis gets turned off and pickleball.
So during the pickleball hours, the tennis is turned off.
Right, I understand during the
Yeah.
set hours. I'm just,
No,
if
during
we,
those 4 days, anybody could reserve it. If a pickleball player reserves it,
Okay.
one of the 4
Then it is
pickleball courts,
pickleball.
then tennis wouldn't,
Able to
then it's
play.
reserved.
No, I said that it would be switched over 4 days in advance. The tennis
would
reservation
default to
would be
pickleball.
closed and it would open for pickleball.
A little different because then the tennis people can't do last minute reservations
Well,
during that.
But the word is most tennis players reserve.
So Robert, idea, get a couple days in advance, well, got some value. Clear with your explanation as to whether or not that would apply to Mr. Jessup's reservations as well. Because he reserves stuff and then he drops it the day of. And when he reserves, he's got 3 courts. And he reserves them all the time for his classes. You know, right now during the summer, of course, he's got a lot of kid classes. So I understand that. But other times, regular school year, he does not have that. He drops those reservations the day of if somebody calls and says, I'm not going to make it. So by the 4-day thing also to Mr. Jessup's classes, asking him to re-verify that we're coming, that he would make those courts available to tennis players, because it's not just pickleball people that have complained, it's tennis people that also have complained that they can't get on the courts and are asking for some changes and, you know, with regards to player capital and things like that. And that's one of the questions, comments that I've received is that we should apply that also to player capital. Is that your plan?
Could we set
my
that
question.
policy is the could
I'm
we?
going to say, we're asking for feedback and
Yeah.
direction from the council as
I
to
have a
what,
question.
what changes, if any, you would
There's a
like.
question.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
Hello?
all right, I have a
Yeah.
question. So why isn't it set up reverse? So pickleball has priority on that court except if there's not anything there, then it can be tennis, because that would be, first of all, so I've got history on pickleball because I helped set up the Palo Alto Pickleball Group originally and was teaching it for 6 years. So what would happen was there'd be 50 pickleball players trying to fight over 2 open courts or 3 open courts and watching tennis courts being empty and not being able to play there. So if you flip the scheduling so that if no pickleball people sign up for that day, and then it can be a tennis court. If you do that, that would handle the volume much differently, I would think. What do you think? So it's a question.
So
You say, what do
attempt
you
to
think?
answer.
I've tried that
The
before.
pickleball hours that are reservable now have been set by council.
Okay,
So the prioritization in terms of is the court available for tennis versus pickleball, the hours that it's available have been set by the council.
okay,
The distinct difference versus the way that a lot of other jurisdictions manage pickleball is we do not have open play.
right,
So it's a reservation system. You come in reserve, you have your foursome, and
Right.
you play. As opposed to having 50 people wait outside for their turn to play.
Right. right. Okay, I'll come back to this on the comment section then.
So,
Nice. All right. Do we have any
whatever you
more-
want to open to public comment,
questions?
or unless you have more questions.
Okay, let's start public comment. Is there anyone? Yeah.
It's green.
Hi, I'm Kat Westover, Heather Drive. Thanks, first of all, for your service. Appreciate that. As you know, pickleball is probably the fastest growing sport in the US right now. And it does offer the highest and best use for space because as you know, you can get 16 people on one tennis court for pickleball and only 4 tennis players. As I understand it from attending the Park and Rec meetings, the tennis key sales have been mostly pickleball. So it's really, really successful. A lot of those pickleball players are ex-tennis players because it's a lot easier. So there is a fight for courts for weekends and weeknights. And so people are waiting till midnight a week before to go on and try to get courts for the weekend. So there is a battle. And I think it's lovely that we're coming up with a temporary solution by fixing the reservation system. Some other ideas are that, from what I understand, also from the Park and Rec meetings, that years ago, it was agreed that Player Capital would only have 2 courts they were crossing out, and now they're doing 4 courts. Now, maybe back then tennis was dwindling, so there was no battle. But now that pickleball is picking up, and we have 1 court, as he explained, that is lined for tennis and lined for pickleball, which one is confusing, especially if you haven't played there often. 2, when you hit a ball and it hits one of the white tennis lines, it skips. So it lends that to the play. So I know also that what else is being discussed is possibly, and I know it's expensive, is converting the clay court, from what I understand, is rarely used. That would solve a huge problem because that would give Player Capital maybe let them go to 3 courts and then 1 court dedicated to pickleball, meaning no tennis lines, and tennis for the other courts. So I think that would solve a lot of the problems. I don't think there's much contention to doing that. Oh, thank you. I just want to make sure I got everything. And that's it. Do you have any questions for me? I do play at Holbrook quite often. So if you have any, and I used to play at Menlo Park all the time for free before we started the program here. So like I'm an Atherton resident, using Menlo Park for free for years before we picked up pickleball here. So thank you for that. Love having it in my backyard. No questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Please.
Did you guys already read the letters, emails that were sent in or no?
Yeah, we're going to
Have
comment.
the letters.
We're going to highlight
You don't
that.
read them out loud at the meeting, you just,
Okay, we've all read them though.
okay.
Yeah.
So my name's MJ Davy. I did send a letter, but I just wanted to show up for support. Like we appreciate the town's investment in recreational space and the work that goes into balancing the needs. And like Kat said, we get a lot more pickleball players on a tennis court than tennis and their residents. And I was out a month or so ago and it was packed. There were 16 people playing pickleball. The Little League had something fun going on, and it was just such a lively atmosphere. It was just really nice to see the park being utilized, and everything was just flowing nicely. Parking was fine, and it was great to have shared use between baseball, tennis, and pickleball. And would just like to see more weeknights. I know there's a lot of mornings, but I work, so I'd like to play after 5. And right now, that's only on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. So I was asking for more space and more time for pickleball. And I thought your idea was great, Eric, about having pickleball, if it's not being used for pickleball, to have it used for tennis. So giving pickleball a shot. Thanks.
She was talking about my question, by the way.
Yeah, that was good question. Want to know what everyone thought about this question.
Good evening. It's Walt Robinson. I'm a member of Park and Rec, and I've lived through 3 years of the pickleball tennis issue. And I was also part of the subcommittee which recommended to the Park and Rec what is before you right now. Let me make one comment first about the conversion of clay court. As you've heard, that would solve a lot of problems. A year ago, you looked at that and decided not to do that. There was concern by all of us that that is one of the few clay courts around. And at that point, there was no action taken. This year, we have more information. We have put out a survey, essentially, to every person that holds a key. We asked them about that. And although 5 of them said they play on the clay court, the clay court is dominated by 5 other players. Otherwise, many of these players are simply on there because they can't get on another court. So if we convert, we solve all those problems. The 5 other players have not complained, the people that use that. So that's an issue. However, when we saw the financial issue and see the $100,000 to $200,000, this is not our jurisdiction, but there is money, as we've learned, in the tennis court fund. So that might be used for part or all that conversion. That would solve all the issues that we have here, I think. Secondly, since that would take time and may not occur, that's where we came up with this version of trying to open up more. And as you point out, this is not like Palo Alto. It's not like places. These are all courts that were donated for tennis and solely for tennis, and they're done on a reservation system. I think the actual point is that there's about equal. We can't estimate really, of course, who signs up, but because of the increases we've seen over the last 2 years, it's about equal. So we've also dealt with this issue about should player capital have less courts. People have recommended that the contract that comes up in September be modified, even though it's only an extension. And they modify that by specifying the courts. For years, ever since 2014, it's been very well specified. They've used 3 courts plus the clay court. They have to suffer through and use that. Weekends, one day they were to have only 2 courts plus 1. And that's been the way it's done. You renewed the contract 3 years ago, and that was the way that the course of dealing has been that way. The only way it's spelled out is in 2014. So what we've done is we've looked at that, and that's when we said to the staff, can you just talk to player capital, see if they can adjust? So for instance, if Saturday's the afternoon's the only crowded time. And if you can adjust that so that in fact you're using somewhat fewer courts, an extra court, you move a lesson to another day. That's the way we've resolved that this should be done. We spent a lot of time looking at the reservations, and you should know the reservations are deceptive. There's lots of no-shows here, both tennis and in pickleball. People want to sign up and maybe they're going to play it or maybe not. So it's not as used as we think it is. The problem, of course, in wanting to have their own pickleball court in Court 1 is that doesn't work very well, and it's not necessary from the numbers you look at. The afternoons are not, the 3 afternoons they have are not particularly heavily used. And so what we say is take it slowly and let's see what happens if we go for the 4 advance, and let's just see how it works. We can always change it after that. You can't change it if you say we're going to make a permanent pickleball court and rip out everything there and make it only to a permanent pickleball court. So that's the basis for our recommendation.
It's another.
It's more.
Bob Roser, I live in Lloyden Park. I want to, been around playing tennis on the courts here. The courts were purchased by tennis players. The town did not spend anything to play it. I think the obvious solution is to have another place for pickleball, but we don't have that and we don't have the money to do it, so I won't spend any time on that. But I do think that we should try to get the situation where we are actually doing things people who play pickleball or tennis will get what they want or get an opportunity to play on the court that they want to play on. The current, what is called the court 3, which is the clay court, I consider it dangerous. Okay, number one, the water to the court doesn't work. And then the thing we put in, which was a filter to filter the water, didn't work. I've only gotten almost hurt on the court once. I don't play on it anymore for that reason. And Player Capital, Jessup, is the guy who does that court, who puts water on the court to the point where you can play on it. He also takes sacks of clay and puts it there and spreads them all around and then makes the court to the proper thing. So he's doing all of that as part of Player Capital in order to get one court more to play with. So the obvious thing to give both sides more time is to make that court from a clay court to a hard court. And unfortunately, I know we don't have money to run and do that, but I think that the pickleball players should look at maybe somebody stepping up and having some kind of a way to get the money. Right, so far we haven't had anybody. But what we're doing is trying to move things around. But I think the longer term solution is to have that clay court or hard court again. It was made as a clay court for one person who had a daughter who was a clay player, and the court goes to the town once he gets it built. So I think we need to continue to work to get that a hard court so we can solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. Thank you.
The city attorney wants me to recognize that we did receive the public comments. They were included in the agenda, rolled up the packet, and I can note that we have one from
Anthony, your
MJ
mic
and
is-
Christine
Yeah,
David.
use the other mic. Yeah,
Robert,
that
can't hear
mic-
it.
that
Oh,
mic's
sorry.
dead.
Sound like a robot voice
Do
right
I
now.
say-
The system
Sorry.
is terrible.
We received a few public comments, which you all received, and they were included in the packet. They're available online for review. One was from MJ Davy, another was from Christine David, and I don't believe we received any other public comments. And I checked with our Public Works Director. So just noting that for the record. For this meeting.
There was a lot of public
We've received
comment from the
many other
prior
public
meeting.
comments, right?
The previous meeting.
Yeah, for previous meetings and for pickleball and tennis related in general.
Any online? Anyone else? Room? Okay, great. Let's close public comment. And I have a question as it relates to clay court and the maintenance and the state of the clay court. What does it cost? I mean, we have to water. I'm not a tennis player and I don't play on clay. And now I'm hearing there's like bags of clay being moved around and we have to water it. Like how much does it cost for us to maintain it, and is it in good repair? I don't know
I
what,
think last
how
year
hard
we,
is this?
last year, I think we spent about $8,000 to $10,000 on maintenance.
That a
We,
normal,
what's that?
is that like an annual type normal number or a one-off?
Cost increased significantly over the last few years. Before that, we were spending maybe about 2,500 to 3,000. And then we do stockpile clay bags, as was mentioned on the side, for refresh as needed by player capital. And so they're responsible for kind of the day-to-day cleanup of the courts and making them ready for play as part of our contract. It's the bigger maintenance issues that we deal with. And so similarly, when we do the resurfacing and sealing of the tennis courts, there's periodic maintenance that are required for that. Clay is a little more touchy and requires a lot more maintenance. And we, as Mr. Rocher indicated, that the irrigation system for the court is a bit finicky, gets clogged, and needs to be addressed periodically as well.
All right, anyone have any?
And if the council wants to see the calendar, reservation calendar at any point in this conversation, we can put that up on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, might as well pull it up.
I didn't see anything on the use of the handball court in terms of hours or anything like that. There was no data on that.
The handball court is just out there. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever seen anybody
use
use
it.
that
Okay,
area.
well,
The people
Goodness.
warm up on it.
Well,
Tennis
but-
players warm up. on
Yeah,
it.
so that's what we used
Not
to use it
used for
for.
handball.
Right. Yeah, that's what we used to use that.
No
for.
fence around it.
Right,
Are we doing
right.
questions or comments right now?
Raise your hand and you
Burn
get called on.
comments.
Yeah.
We're,
Go ahead.
it's all is allowed. Okay, Rick,
Vice
go
Mayor
ahead.
wants to say something.
Okay, so I think the issue of maintenance of the clay court is pretty irrelevant. What's really important is how much these courts are used. We have 6 courts. 3 are used by player capital. 1 is dedicated to tennis and reserved by tennis players. 1 is shared between pickleball and tennis players, and 1 is the clay court. The clay court, the maximum it's been used over the last 2 years is 20 hours a month. And most of those hours are used by player capital. So that compares to the other courts that are much more used. As Bob said, the clay court was created for 1 tennis player whose family donated the funds to build the court. It's been a maintenance problem from the beginning, and it just isn't used because of that, because it's not a very effective court. It's not used. That's what's important. I think the right solution here, and there's a lot of demand for more tennis, both from tennis players and pickleball. We really felt the pickleball push for more need because there wasn't any reserved pickleball courts before, and it's an extremely popular sport, and people are really enjoying it in Holbrook Palmer Park. I think the right solution for us is to convert the clay court back to a hard court and to make Court 1, which is the shared pickleball court, a permanent pickleball court. Get rid of the tennis lines, put in the pickleball lines. If we convert the clay court, that's going to add more tennis court time available for the tennis players. Although they will lose what had been some hours on Court 1, they'll gain many more hours on Court 3, which is the clay court. So the issue for us, I think, is how I think that issue of converting the clay court is a no-brainer. The issue is how to pay for it. And if it's done privately, as the event garden was done and the Little League field was done, it's estimated it would cost between $70,000 and $100,000. And if it were done by the town, it would cost about twice that much because of the prevailing wage obligation and our procedures. I think that the most likely scenario is that the town would manage it and do it. I think that the way that we could finance that, and what I'd like to raise to the council, is that we basically create a matching program and we motivate people to make some donations to the town to convert that court. I think there will be mostly pickleball players who would make donations, but I think some tennis players will also make donations because this will significantly increase the availability of tennis time. I think to motivate the pickleball players to make more substantial donations, it's appropriate for us to say that if this happens, we'll dedicate court 1 to be a permanent pickleball court, and we'll take out the tennis lines and put in the 4 pickleball courts permanently. And we could do that on a matching 1-to-1 or a matching $1.50 to 1, or 2-to-1. I mean, we should talk about what makes the most sense. If it were 2-to-1, we have a little over $200,000 in the tennis fund. So personally, I think using $100 or maximum $120,000 out of the tennis fund to convert that court is not a problem. We've got that money. It mostly sits there. It's there to take care of the courts when we need them over time, but it's a substantial amount of money. It would be wise to use some of that money to make that conversion happen. If it were 2-to-1, we'd need to raise about $60,000. We'd have $180,000. I think that would be enough to make that conversion happen. Maybe it'd be a little less. We don't have a hard estimate.
So I just wanted to interject. The dollars that we provided were construction only. And so for the town to do it, we would have to hire a designer to design the improvements. And there are some costs associated with that. So as you have your deliberations, and if you're thinking about creating a project for the town to manage, I would request, as we said before, to maybe create that project and give us some seed money so that we can hire a designer that would design the courts and give us a more firm cost estimate.
What if
We would need that
what
for
if the
sure.
foundation did
We would
that?
need that for sure.
What if the
Foundation-
foundation
Foundation is more than welcome to do at the pleasure of the council. I mean, it can be managed by the foundation, or it could be managed by a private source.
Can you explain the process of how we can avoid prevailing wage? Like if we,
Yeah, you
like this
have
is
the
our
foundation.
park and it'll be our money. So what, like,
So,
what's the line here? Like if we
okay,
pay
so
for
I
2/3
will
of it,
chime in
or-
and the city attorney will correct
Yes.
me. The second that the town spends a dime, it triggers.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so if the town is
Yeah.
participating with
No.
regards to
It can't be
resources,
smoke and mirrors.
so if we design it, that's spending money towards the project and it triggers. If we're doing matching, we're spending money and it triggers. And Mona, you're more than welcome to chime in and correct me.
That's what I
Sure,
said.
it's, there is
Right.
what's called the de minimis exception, which is if the town's contribution is less than $600,000 towards the overall, or 2% of the project cost, whichever is less, then that does not trigger prevailing wages. But if the town, as Mr. Ovadia has just indicated, approving any kind of contract, whether it's a construction contract or a design contract, then the town, it's a public works project, thereby triggering prevailing wages.
I would
But
contact,
It's under $600,000. What was that? saying?
She said
Or
2%. So
Oh,
2% of,
2%.
Whichever's
2%
lower.
of 200,000 is $4,000.
Right, okay.
So if we
So-
spend more than $4,000 of town money, then
Yeah, and
Prevailing
so
wages.
I mean, in essence, if the town is participating financially in any regard, that's really going to be the threshold.
if we wanted to outsource it to the foundation, we would, how,
well,
would
we
just be
have
like,
to, we have to see
That's a
if they'd be
private
willing to do
organization.
it first off, but
right.
if it was a foundation, like we did the event garden, people made donations to the event garden. They hired a contractor, they supervised it. When it was done, they had the town
It's terrible.
review it and then accept it, and then it became the responsibility of maintaining it to the town. So we'd have to talk to Frank and Walt here, who's on also He's shaking his head, but I'm just saying,
Big
that is a way to avoid the prevailing wage, that's all.
Okay, so I have a question then on that.
Not,
I
know that I'm interrupting the normal process.
Do want to hear from you, but Eric has a question, so
I-
let's let him.
Why would we avoid prevailing wage?
That was gonna be my
Because if it
next.
goes to a third party.
I know, but why do we
Well,
want to do that?
It's
because
cheaper.
it's
It's a
expensive.
markup of it.
It just adds to the cost of the overall
But
project.
is it going to the individuals who are doing it or is it going to the corporation?
It goes to the
Individuals.
payment of
Yeah,
the,
I'm just saying, I don't want to be in a situation where we're working around paying people what they deserve.
it's the
okay, so-
workers who are providing the service who would be receiving the prevailing
I have
wage
An
rate.
HR guy.
Oh,
Are we-
spoke
are we
spoken
taking
like a
fun
human
as
who cares about people on the planet.
I think Eric, are you done with your?
Yeah, well, for this, I've got another comment in a minute, but.
Do you want to do both?
No, I want to hear this first. If you're gonna-
Yeah,
are you
Walt
gonna-
wants to complain about it.
Can I just make one comment?
And then
The
we'll
event
finish
garden
with
was done when the foundation had a person there that was extremely competent. He had run a company in New York that was involved in construction. He's no longer active there, and I don't see any possibility of that happening. Just so you know, I mean, it's a major proposition to run that project. It was one thing to run an event garden and pave over and get plantings and things like that. I oversimplify. So anyway, it's a very creative idea and always one we looked at. In fact, I talked to George about the way we did the event garden, and that's why we came up with it.
All right, Elizabeth.
Okay, so I want to second what Vice Mayor put forth. I feel very strongly the same way, except, you know, with the clay court, I do have a little bit of sentimentality to it because when it was brought to us as this gift, it was touted as a very special tennis court, and there's not many of them in the area. And so the thought was that it would be used more, but it is a maintenance headache. And I know that we've been talking about this, and I've had lots of residents weigh into me and say that it really needs to be changed out. And so I think very prominent residents are very much in favor of transforming the clay court into a regular tennis court. And then that gives Player Capital another tennis court. And then to make the court one an authentic, safe pickleball court. And yeah, and go forward that way. The handball court, that's a whole nother project that I don't think we should even kind of talk about right now because of the expense that it will take to do the infrastructure and everything for it. People want to warm up or practice there, that's fine, but it's, yeah. But that's my comment on that, and I think that that's a good way to go. Finding the money, I think the tennis fund certainly has some money to put towards it, doing some fundraising so that the tennis players feel that the pickleball people can contribute to their own individual court somehow is appropriate. So we've got dedicated people here in our town who can help make that happen. And then they feel that they have some ownership. So I think a fundraising component has got to be part of the solution also.
Okay. Court Bill.
So, first off, there's been a lot of great ideas, and a nice comment from Walt, who mentioned it to me yesterday, and he mentioned it here again today, with regards to taking all these ideas, maybe we see what works and move incrementally as opposed to doing all of them at once, or taking the drastic approach. So we first spoke about maybe we can change the reservation system, getting people to reserve or remove their reservations 4 days in advance and see if that opens things up. That's a great idea. we should probably implement that as quickly as we can and couple that with Eric's idea of saying, court one is a pickleball first reservation as opposed to a tennis first reservation followed by that. That doesn't open up enough time for the pickleball, then we can take the next step with regards to expending additional funds to convert the court. We do have money in the tennis fund that could probably more than cover it. I don't know if we have to redo any courts this year. I don't know if player capital has indicated anything, but that would be something else we can do. And so I think that as opposed to jumping in with both feet, do 1 foot at a time. Let's get the reservation system fixed, back to 4, and then also couple it with Eric's suggestion and see how that goes for the rest of the summer. And then from there, we take the next step with regards to converting the court if that's what we need to do. Probably is something that's smart for us to do in the future. Just the question is, since we just approved the budget, if we don't have to reallocate money right now, it may be worthwhile to wait till we have our VLF funds and other things. So, okay, thank you for listening.
Question.
So
You referred to Eric's suggestion, but what exactly are
Eric's
you referring to?
Eric's suggestion was that for court number 1, the priority and the order of precedence is that pickleball first. If they register, they have first right of refusal to register and claim that court, as
Still a
opposed to
dual
today
court.
it's tennis.
And then if they don't choose it, then it becomes a tennis court rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And since, so I'll go quickly on my comments. First of all, I agree that the idea of going with what Rick talked about in terms of converting that is a good idea. I do think that taking steps in the interim, like prioritizing the pickleball on court 1 as a flip is a big one, both for pickleball and for just sort of getting used to a different change in the model for how tennis is scheduled. The other thing too is that I think the idea in my mind would be that our intent is to convert the clay court to a hard court now. And we say that now, and then we go through the process of when do we pay for it and how as the next step. But the first thing is to make sure that there's space for the pickleball, make sure that that we really understand that the courts are being used, and maybe we need one more metric to the measurements we have, which is we understand schedule, we don't understand use. And they could easily add that to their metric so that we could understand, first of all, is there an individual who regularly schedules and doesn't show? Then we want to talk to that person. The other thing we want to do is we want to understand why people are scheduling and not doing it. And it may be because they intend to, but their schedule changes. But we want to understand, because one of the things I've seen again and again and again is tennis courts empty and nobody using them. And there's pickleball players walking around trying to figure out where to play.
See it on pickleball.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, well, you do, but not as much. But anyway, that's what I would say. Yes on the conversion. Take the steps now to make sure there's room for pickleball and tennis.
Okay. I haven't had a time to comment myself. I think we should convert the clay court into pickleball. I think we should pay it with our own money, because I think prevailing wages is a good policy in general. I have not been on the council long enough to understand as people paid for their own tennis court. We all pay taxes. It seems like the pickleball community, and 3 years of asking for more pickleball, and so we should give them more pickleball. So I think we should convert the clay court, spend tennis funds and general funds, get it done. And in the interim, while we figure out the construction, what Eric said is fixing the reservation system to make pickleball easier. Maybe if we want to do some fundraising thing, we could say if the pickleball community fundraises enough, we'll do open play, little
No.
Little cherry to dangle
No,
there.
I don't think so.
No,
Open play, it's a
no.
wonderful way to build community,
Well,
so.
Well, here's the other thing too, is that,
I
you
have
know,
I have a
Not open play.
clarification for what you said, because
Sure.
you kept saying, I agree with you that we need to convert the clay court,
Yes.
but we don't want to convert it to pickleball because,
To
right.
tennis and then
to
have
t-
one
right,
be.
okay, I just
pure
wanted to make sure
pickleball.
you were clear on that, because
Yes.
it's closer to the
yeah, it's exactly what you
residents.
say. You
Right.
you
And-
don't want
yeah.
pickleball close
Right.
to houses.
No,
Got it.
it was a tennis court to
Just
start with.
making-
We want to add a
Yeah.
tennis court to make court one be all
Right,
pickleball.
Exactly.
And I think we should spend our own money so that we can do it quickly because the fundraising
Our own
stuff.
money?
That's what I'm saying. So.
Everybody on the
I-
council. go
I
pony
might
up
be
50K.
outvoted for it, but I think this is what, this is a thing that everyone's asking for, so we should be spending money in building that
Right,
thing.
I agree.
So,
Exactly.
I
yeah.
agree.
so
Coming after we.
I'll just go back and just kind of a little bit of history. And there's some tennis people here in the way, way back beginnings of time, when the earth was, still
Before.
being formed, before probably you were born, but not saying. But, the courts were really, the community, the town didn't have money. Right. I mean, we are very, very blessed that we have a balanced budget. And I want to give all the credit to high property taxes and city manager and the finance director and how they've managed everything. So we have.
And Robert, for the
some
right way he does his
Yeah,
work.
where's Robert? Robert Baron III.
Oh,
our
Robert
finance-
P.
Well, Robert O. too does a
well,
good job.
yes,
does a good
that
job
Robert too.
spending that money.
But anyway, I'm just saying that we do have funds in our, that we're not underwater in our finances. But I think there's also some kind of ownership, to kind of bring the community together to invest in pickleball courts. But we can prop it up also, and the matching and stuff.
Well-
Maybe you have an idea, Mr. City Manager.
Perhaps a suggestion, you can't authorize a capital project this evening. That's not what's on the agenda, but you can direct staff if you want to, if the consensus is to convert the court, direct staff to put together a proposal for design services of that, because that's going to be the town dollars. Bring that back to the council for approval.
Yeah, let's
And
do
then
that.
at that point, you can also start talking about how you want to fund the actual capital component of it, whether you wanted to get that ownership interest by the pickleball players. And at what,
Yeah, matching or whatever.
Wait a second, but on the agenda is convert the clay court.
it's discussion and direction.
I understand, but
You need a budget resolution to add money to the budget. That's not on the agenda.
And we would need to competitively
Oh, wait,
bid
we
in
can't hear you.
construction work.
And we need to competitively bid
Yeah.
such projects, so.
If I could piggyback real quick. So if there's a consensus desire that the town be participating in funding and manage the project, as the city manager indicated, we can take the interim time between now and September is to try and solicit a design proposal from a professional to tell us how much it's going to cost to do the design work. We'd bring that back for you for consideration to approve the contract and to fund it. And that what we need is direction as to what you want to do. If you want the real question is it a town participating project or not? And if it is, and we're going to manage the design, we're happy to do that. We just need to get that direction from you. We'll find a professional to do the design.
Give the plan to.
think
And
that's
then
the
you'll
easiest.
choose as to whether that comes from tennis fund, general fund, or other.
We do.
I do have a question to better understand the comment about the reservation system that was made, if that's kind of the way things are leaning. First off, we don't
Bert's
manage the
idea.
reservation system. It's managed by Player
Right,
Capital.
we know that.
And so is the request for the non-official pickleball hours to first be available for pickleball and then 3 days before switch to tennis? Or,
The idea would be that right now we say it's tennis unless it's not, and then it's pickleball. Because if no one chooses tennis, then it's okay
No,
to. be
there's
pickleball.
fixed hours for pickleball.
Right.
And so if those hours are used or not reserved they stay pickleball.
Right.
The remaining hours that are available for tennis reservation are available for tennis. And player capital is manually transitioning those, if they're not reserved, over to pickleball.
And what I would say is on that portion, that second portion, it stays pickleball unless pickleball doesn't have anybody, and then it goes to tennis.
Okay, so how far in advance on that reservation do we want to ask Michael to
Said
take
4
it from
days.
pickleball to tennis?
So whatever they would have done in the tennis situation.
Okay,
3
so
to 4
that-
days.
3 to 4 days?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's,
I just needed the clarification so I know what to ask Michael to
Right.
try and accommodate.
I have a question as it relates to hours and usage.
Yes.
Is tennis popular in the evenings? I hear a lot more pickleball at night, but I know more pickleball people. So it seems like there's interest in evening usage for pickleball, and if it's not a popular time for tennis.
George is bringing up the reservation system right now. And
Maybe
so
it's-
that is
That was
today.
over right there.
All right.
So today there were about 4 hours of
That's
pickleball reservations in total.
June 17th is what dates up there.
Okay, sorry, last month.
Yeah.
So last month on the 17th, on a Wednesday, nobody reserved court 1 for tennis. And there was a total of 4 hours of pickleball use on that day. If you want to, I don't know if you
I'll
want to
keep
move
going.
that forward a bit.
Not that many is available.
Right, and so as we look at that on that other day, there was somebody that reserved tennis in the evening. But if you're saying generally speaking, it looks like there were 3 hours on the 16th of tennis in total and 2 hours of pickleball that evening.
So on the nights when there's no pickleball in the evening, is there abundance of tennis that's happening on those nights? Like, I'm just wondering, like, should we add
I'm gonna
another
say
You
night?
got the other
it
courts right here.
varies.
You can see there's nobody playing tennis either.
there's no tennis in the evening on the
Correct.
schedule.
That's one of the items on, Rick, is the
Look,
hours.
look at the
Yeah,
time. There's
the
lots
courts are
of
all
time
here.
open.
Right, I'm asking
The
about the
evening is completely
evenings.
open, except for a few pickleball players.
So on that evening, starting at 4 o'clock, nobody used the clay court, nobody reserved court 4
5.
or 5.
Right?
Court 6, which is a hard court, was reserved for 2 hours. Court 2 was reserved for 1.
Okay.
Not
And then
much.
pickleball court 3 was reserved for 2 hours.
Right, so what,
There's plenty of time available. Both
So
tennis and
both
pickleball
both
in the
were
evening.
available that afternoon.
but it's not, pickleball's not available every evening. Only available 3 nights a week,
Unless,
unless
right now,
24
unless it
hours
gets switched
before.
over by, so here's an example on Wednesday, July 15th, which is tonight. Pickleball is not reservable
Right.
on our regular schedule, so that's why it's marked as closed. 2 hours on court 1 were reserved for tennis. So tonight, starting at 5, I think it's 5 o'clock, till 7, the court was used for tennis.
So I guess my question, it sounds like I'm not supported by the rest of the council, is if people are asking for additional pickleball evening playtime, I was wondering if there is flexibility to add more evenings for the pickleball schedule as an interim step if the tennis courts aren't being used on those 4 other nights a week.
Yes,
Well,
that's
so people
important.
can book those a week in advance or plan ahead.
4 days in advance. So it's like,
Right, well, now
Yeah.
we're saying 4 days in advance, but
yeah,
I'm just
I
wondering.
support that.
Yeah, it just seems like if tennis is not popular at night, we should add more pickleball. Turn that court on, is what I'm wondering.
Well, I think that
Doesn't look like tennis is
That's what the
popular.
4 days does. If it's not reserved for tennis, it's available for pickleball.
Right,
But
If it's
that's
available.
not true for every day now. It's only true for Tuesday or whatever it is, Tuesday and Thursday.
I'll try and simplify.
No, that it's dedicated to pickleball Tuesday and
So right
Thursday.
now
The
we
rest
have
of the time it's
dedicated
available
pickleball
if it's
hours
not
that
reserved
don't
for
switch
tennis.
back.
Let's just make.
Right, 24 hours in advance.
No, okay, so the pickleball hours on the court are the pickleball hours on the court. They
Yes.
don't change, meaning that on every morning, it's not going to be available for tennis regardless of if it's reserved or not.
I'm following.
Okay. On the days that it is not available for pickleball, you got two choices. One is to say what Councilmember Lane said is that, well, we'll start with the priority being pickleball. And if it's not reserved for pickleball, we'll switch it back to tennis 4 days in advance. Or the current process is that it stays open for tennis. And then 4 days in advance, if not reserved for tennis, it'll flip to pickleball. It's just basically two sides of the same
Yeah.
coin.
Right. I understand all of that. What I was asking is separate of this 4-day lead time
Yeah.
thing, we have also set pickleball dedicated hours so people can plan a week in advance or whatever. And so I'm wondering if there is no interest in tennis on the days at night, and should we add just a dedicated pickleball night to the schedule, or is 4 days enough time and we're just
That's
solving it?
that's the pleasure of the council.
All right. I mean, it sounds like I don't know
No,
that
I think eventually, I think that court one with the four courts
right.
will be 100%, in my mind, one day, or all four courts, all day long, 7 days a week will be
Tennis.
pickleball.
Right. But that
No
takes a
tennis at
while.
all. Now, what we've got to do is we've got to fix the clay court
That's
to
right.
make it even or get player capital to back off a little.
Yeah.
And that's in their negotiations. It'll start in 2 months.
Okay, so two things. I think we don't, I think what is proposed by Park and Rec is the right answer. That if pickleball players can reserve what are currently available for tennis on court one 4 days in advance, if it hasn't been used for tennis, then that's going to open up a significant amount of more time for pickleball without adversely impacting tennis. And I think that's sufficient, and we should do that. That is an easy issue. I don't think we need to open up more pickleball time dedicated to pickleball, because if you just look at it, there's still some time that's available for pickleball that isn't reserved. So and it may be people prefer to play on a Wednesday rather than a Tuesday or Thursday, but you can't tell that. And if we make this switch from 1 day in advance to 4 days in advance, opening up those courts if they're not reserved for tennis, I think that's good enough for pickleball. And that's what the pickleball players have said to the Park and Rec. So I don't think we have to do anything else on that. I think and to me, that's a fairly small issue. The much bigger issue is making a commitment to convert the clay court to a hard court. I think we should do that. I don't think there's the support on this council, and I don't support it, for the town to pay for that 100%. I think that that's why I proposed that we set up a matching arrangement, and staff can come back and make a recommendation to us on different options that we can use to finance that conversion, and I'm perfectly comfortable with that. One option is for a private entity, the foundation, as Bill suggested, or player capital. And I asked Michael if he could manage that. He told me he could. I'm not sure as a vendor of the town that that really would work. And I'm most confident that if the town managed it, it'd be done properly and efficiently. The problem is that's more expensive. But I think we could get some donations if we did a matching. So I think we need to move on that, and having the staff come back to us with proposals on how to do it and more dedicated focus on the cost will be good. But I think it's not a 1-2, we're going to do one thing first and another thing second. Mm-hmm. I think we have to make a commitment to convert the clay court. Clay court isn't being used, and it's needed. It's needed for both, by both tennis players and pickleball players, to open up more time. And to me, it's a no-brainer to get it done.
It's a waste sitting.
Yeah, I agree. I just, the only thing I want to make sure that it's clear from my position on it is I have no problem with the donation standpoint as long as it's not being worked to get around prevailing wage. Because I think the engagement process for the community is the way to do it, whereas we see the names on the wall and things like that, and the bricks out front, all that kind of stuff. That's all good, and I think it is a way to get the noise in terms of the people knowing about the changes more out there too, and just move ahead with the whatever steps it takes to start that. So let's do it.
Okay. Feel like you have enough.
Which priority, I mean, the vice mayor indicated what Park and Rec was recommending with respect to the 4 days, but you had.
I'm okay with it as long as we have a situation where it's clear to pickleball players that they have an option to do that.
Okay.
Because right now it's not, I don't think that's clear to them. They sort of assume that tennis players are going to get it and they don't even try. So you don't even know if they wanted to play on.
No, it's
the
got to
nights.
be clear and it's got to
Yeah.
be announced through player capital. When people go in to make a reservation, that by the way, this is a rule change.
And I think.
And tennis people need to know that too.
Right, right. And I think it's important that player capital is playing evenly on the, I know their bias is towards tennis because that's where they come from, but I need them to know, to be known as the group that is interested in players who want to use the court of both types of sport.
Okay. You guys have everything?
Think so.
Have
All right.
One thing, how,
Yeah, you have to
Come
come up
to
to the
the-
mic to open up the.
Yeah, we're public comment.
Not public.
okay, the comments are good, but how will the people who are pickleball players and tennis players know what the rules are with,
The player capital has to announce that.
well,
We're gonna
that-
ask them
that is-
to
that is-
announce it.
That has not been done. Nothing's been done.
Well, because we just talked about it.
Okay, so.
Nothing's been done because we just talked about it and said, these are the rules. Now,
Okay,
they're
so,
going to have negotiations, Bob, and George and Robert will be communicating with.
okay, so I should get information from Robert. Okay, so you will send it out to everybody who has a key or everybody in the country, in the
Once you talk to the
town,
vendor.
or what?
So once the program is changed, I assume there'll be some
Through
notice.
the mayor, I'm happy to answer. So the way that I see this, we'll have some conversations with Player Capital Tennis to see how we can work things out. We will follow with making some adjustments on our website to clarify how the reservations work. And then we can work with Michael to blast out to all the key holders. So that's kind
Basically
of
what it is now, but changing 1 day to 4 days.
Yeah, but we haven't announced, we don't have that written in on our website, so we'll modify that.
All right, thank you.
So it's TBD.
So, and I think we also would like player capital to have to give up
Yeah.
their unused courts 4 days in advance, right?
No.
No.
Well, we'll see what we
We
can
talked
work
about.
out with Michael when they have
Yes, we did talk.
cancellations and stuff to open them up as soon as they can.
Okay, great.
And one other item, hearing the council will also work on a draft policy with regards to no-shows, just to kind of make sure that people are canceling if they're not
Yes.
coming.
Okay, well, you had something.
Deposit would be
Okay.
required.
Thanks.
One last public comment.
Make a reservation and don't show.
Okay.
So, of course, I agree with what Vice Mayor said. With respect to the point about opening it up all the time, that would force tennis players to play on the clay court. Because if you take away the time, you're essentially going to fill it up with pickleball players, or they're not going to get on. The tennis players are not. So the tennis players would only have the 2 courts, and they would have that clay court. That's dangerous court. So anyway, I think the answer is exactly as we say, which is of course what we recommended. Thanks so much.
Okay. All right, so
I'm confused
you
now.
guys have direction. That's the end for this item. Let's move on to part 3 of our active. Robert, once again.
You got a really exciting
Why
one
why
tonight.
do I
huh?
have the whole night?
Yeah.
Ah, just-
Just
So,
can't get away from the excitement.
thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As you allude to, this is the third session related to the active transportation plan, which I think we're getting enough feedback that we're able to move forward with so far. And so the last item to talk about really is regards to providing feedback and directions with regards to high-level policy statements to be included in the active transportation plan. So these are, again, high-level policy statements that with that direction, we would move forward through an interactive process to develop actual policies for future implementation. And so the high-level statements that we were talking about relate to a couple of items. The first one is related to frontage improvements, and that is for us to take a look at and evaluate the opportunities where we would require frontage improvements to be constructed with development projects where appropriate. And so high level, given certain thresholds, given different locations, improvements may be required based on what's in the active transportation plan or other policy documents. Related to that is an evaluation of whether or not there'd be an in lieu fee opportunity that would give somebody, a small developer, an opportunity just to pay instead of construct. And then the second policy statement with regards to frontage improvements is evaluating whether or not there is an opportunity to create some sort of development fee to build out infrastructure projects. And so these are just policy statements. Policies would have to be developed by staff with coordination through the council to see at what thresholds and what opportunities may be needed. With regards to that secondary one, a fee nexus study would likely be required and to determine whether or not it's applicable and what opportunities there might be. Associated is a policy statement to develop design standards. And so we are talking about different types of active transportation measures and options. And to be frank, we have a handful of design standards. We don't have many. And so the policy statement is to basically build out that menu. And so we're not talking about what those specifically are or what they look like right now, but just to give direction in that policy statement for staff to work on those things, which again would be coming back to the council with regards to fine tuning what those standards actually look like to make sure that they are consistent with our semi-rural character and fit with the aesthetic of the town, as well as give potentially some flexibility to developers that might end up building their frontages so that it matches their aesthetic as well as the town requirements. And then the last policy statement is related to daylighting, which is state law. And so it's to develop a policy with regards to how we might assist in assuring compliance with the state law and related enforcement. So we're not defining what now, but it is a state law that requires that the 20 feet in advance of a crosswalk on the approach side not have parking. We're not saying to build curbs. We don't have curbs in most of the town. And to be frank, a lot of those areas are not physically parkable anyway. And so it's just taking a look at what kind of policy statement and direction ultimately we want to enact, or high level to develop a policy that we would ultimately enact to kind of facilitate compliance with state law. So with that, Phil, and then following that, we can talk briefly about prioritization, which is also on the attachment as well.
Okay. Do you guys want to talk about all three simultaneously or by them? There's a list.
We're supposed to do this, answer the 4 questions. So why don't we do 4 questions separately?
Okay. So let's do the first one. Frontage requirements, 2-parter. first, is there any questions that we have on the statement of policy? This is basically letting you guys fleshing
This
it
is
out.
the frontage improvement.
The frontage improvement policy, we have two specific statements of policy in here that would then unlock staff actually fleshing out the more detailed policy of these two statements. Like, is that correct? That's what we're being asked to do. So, does anyone have any question about this frontage part here?
So I don't have a question about the frontage. I just asked a question about this new SB 179 law that just passed that makes it so that there are fewer allowed fees associated with development because of trying to push through more affordable housing. Is that going to affect any of this? I just read about that.
SB 179?
I think it's the SB 179. 79. No, not
SB
79.
79
It's
is
a new one. It's like SB 179 or one.
It's not that one.
All right.
We'll look into something.
All right,
that
look at,
might reference
but
that,
it's,
yes.
it's a brand new one that just was approved that is about reducing fees associated with new
Right, yeah, I
development.
saw that, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll check it out.
I have a question.
All right, Bill, then Elizabeth.
So it wasn't clear exactly when a fee, if we agree that we'll charge a fee to homeowners, when that would be applied. Would it be just for new development, or there was a 50%, or what? I guess there wasn't clarity on that. So, you know, before I agree to what we're going to have, I would like to have a little clarity as to how it would be charged.
So the simple answer is that we would analyze and try and come up with alternatives for the council to consider as to what that would be. And so it's just
That's
the
not a clear
policy.
answer to me.
What's that?
As I said, that's not a very clear answer to me. To me, I guess the question is, in this document, it said 50%, or 50% development. So if somebody remodels 50% of their floor space, they would have to redo the frontage. I don't have if we're going to do something, it makes it clean. If it's 100% knockdown, you're going to build a brand new one. But it gets a little dicey where you're saying, well, it's based on,
So the statement of policy that's in italics there is all that's going in the active transportation plan. The paragraph underneath that is what, as the mayor indicated, unlocks staff's direction from the council to go out there, figure out some alternatives, what the town could adopt, what we might adopt, how we would go about doing that, return that to the city council for your input in shaping what exactly that is. So the council would say it's 50%. The council would say it's 100%. You would tell us what it is as we develop those ordinances.
oh, okay, it's kind of a quandary because, as you and I had discussed, this is town infrastructure. As your point, this is town infrastructure and we're asking private citizens to pay for it. Only private citizens that are on certain streets to pay for it at some rate that they may or may not know what that's going to be. So it's a little bit of a quandary.
If I can just add a little bit of information to that. So
Please
in
speak
in
up.
adopting any kind of a development impact fee, the town would be constrained by the Mitigation Fee Act, which is codified at Government Code Section 66,000 et sec, basically standing for the proposition that fees imposed on development have to be proportionate to the impact that was causing the need for, the bike and ped improvements, and reasonably proportionate. So, number one, we can't just levy any amount that we want. It would have to be limited to that. And so if it's a single family residence, for example, versus a multifamily that we're talking about, the multifamily may have greater impacts, have to pay a greater fee. But what the city manager is describing is within the confines of what those maximum amounts are, then the council would provide policy direction on how much of that do you actually want to impose on an applicant.
Yeah, I understand that, Mona, but in this case here, so let's just take Atherton Ave. So Atherton Ave, we've said we're going to put a pedestrian way there. So based on whatever standards we come up with, if they do a redevelopment or 50% or something like that, whatever's suggested, they will have to pay for something in front of their house. Now, people on a different street, say Selby Lane or Selby Avenue or something like that, well, they're not a pedestrian way, so they don't have to pay anything. It doesn't matter if they remodel their house or anything. And so, to me, there's a question of fairness and consistency. So that we're putting in town infrastructure on, say, Atherton Ave, but only people that live on Atherton Ave will be paying that, and only if they're doing a development or 50% or something like that. And so there's a question of fairness here. And you know, of course, in my conversation with George, he indicated, well, you know, it's like a tax, you know, other communities, they pay for the sidewalks, but they include all that into their tax. Well, then everybody pays. That makes it a little fair. I'm not suggesting we have more taxes, but you see where I'm coming from.
I was actually talking when we spoke today about landscape and lighting districts and other
Yeah.
other situations like
No, I
that.
saw
So it's
your- I read
not
your
a
letter.
tax. It's different than a general tax that everybody pays for. It's specific to the neighborhood like Lloyd Park that has sidewalks or something like that. But that's what I was talking about earlier, but you're not debating those details tonight. All you're doing is directing staff, hey, come back with some alternatives we'd like to consider on how we address this issue. If you don't want that in the active transportation plan, you don't have to have it.
Elizabeth Henry. Or you can go after.
So item 3, daylighting.
Wait, no,
Wait a
we're
minute.
starting with one.
We're doing
Oh,
just one.
Just one.
One.
Then we'll. Great. Great. It's on number 1.
So I take it we're obviously focused on the second policy statement, and which is about the development fee. When I read this, it doesn't say anything about the development fee being specific to any street where some work is being done. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it. So my question is the statement of creating a development fee a fee that would apply to any applicable development? Or is it applying only to applicable development on a street that is having some kind of change because of the active transportation plan?
All right, subject to Mona's input as well. I think what the consultant was kind of alluding to were two different types of fees. One is the specific impact fee related to a specific development and your frontage. And if you have required improvements as part of the town's transportation plan, as Councilmember Whitmer indicated on Atherton Avenue, you're talking about a pedestrian walkway. Once we decide where that's going to go, that particular property owner would either build it or pay or contribute toward its construction during their project at whatever threshold you determine that's appropriate. The other one that I think that the consultant was addressing is on a much larger scale that is more akin to the parcel tax, for example, where everybody paid for frontage improvements for drainage and streets and roads as part of that tax.
So which is being proposed in the italicized language?
Closer to the one that's directly in frontage of your property.
Okay, it doesn't say that.
Right.
So is that what we're discussing then, just in front of?
Yes.
Applicable to properties that have some adjustment as called for in the active transportation plan?
Yes, unless the council wishes to look at something broader community-wide. I was having a conversation with Councilmember Lane about something akin to a homeowners association where you come into the neighborhood, you got sidewalks, you got pools, you got other things, you got the park, you pay that as part of your HOA fees, and that contributes to that maintenance. You could develop that as a tax, much like the parcel tax we used to have. If the council wants to move in that direction, we can research that as well.
Yeah, I would not be looking at that, but we talked about it so how do you address what Bill brought up in terms of the fairness of one street versus another?
I think the partial response to that is if you think about it with respect to whether a property owner is receiving a special benefit or a general benefit. So a special benefit would be they're getting an improvement that's directly adjacent to their property. It's increasing the value, it is providing greater access, and it is something that's, you know, tangible that they're paying for. Whereas a general benefit would be something like, you know, park improvements. They are available to the property owner, but they are not necessarily receiving some direct improvement for them. And so I think what I'm hearing staff is proposing right now is with respect to this, to the frontage improvements anyway, it would be the adjacent property owners who are getting that special benefit who would pay their proportionate rate or some other share that the council thinks is appropriate.
Yeah. I don't know that all the property owners would think that it's a property improvement for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, I
agree
don't
with
think.
So
Yeah, that's
I
why I
think
brought
we
it
are
up.
ready to do comments on this item. So let's do very fast public comment on part 1 of this section so that we can then do comments. Anybody public comment on this part? We'll reopen it 4 times. It'll be great. One. Okay, great. So let's do,
I think-
do you want to opine on this part of the?
Well, maybe. What exactly was the first part? Because there were so many.
The part 1, it's the frontage improvements, so part of it is require frontage improvements where appropriate for properties that are on affected areas identified in the active transportation plan. The other half is the fee component of whether or not we want to evaluate doing a fee at some point, with details to be determined later. So,
How the fee
please.
will be-
I'll hazard a comment. Hi, I'm Ross. I'm on Southern Lane. So when you have things that are, it seemed to me when introducing this, it was in the sense of a policy from the council that would affect the transportation plan, as opposed to a transportation plan containing something that then the homeowner might be responsible for paying if they do something, because those are 2 different ends of the dog. You know, one is, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think it makes sense to ask if it would be appropriate for a homeowner to have to respond to something in the plan when it hasn't been determined if anything should even be in the plan. So that would be my initial comment. And I take as an example of that, daylighting, right? Now, daylighting is a good idea. It opens things up for pedestrians. But as far as my understanding of the law, the state doesn't actually mandate like doing anything to highlight the intersection. It just requires you to, like, let's say in good faith, like pit ticket people or whatever. So the net impact on the transportation plan, there isn't a requirement for that in state law. And so it wouldn't make sense for the town to make an accommodation for that to be a part of the plan, because the state doesn't require the town to even do anything there. And so I'm trying to tease apart this notion of what should the town recommend as policy, and how does it conform with state law? Because it doesn't make sense to recommend something that has to be done by, let's say, a property owner when the state law doesn't require that such a thing even occur.
Said.
Okay. Section. So let's do the frontage improvements. Does any? Policy statement of policy.
So Robert, could you tease out really what the first statement of policy directs staff to put together?
Okay. It directs staff to put together a policy statement or an actual policy with regards to what developers are required to do in front of their properties based on what it is or how much they are building. And I'll give you a couple of examples. We have multifamily zoning, and actually in our code, I think you already said, they have to build their frontages.
That's in our code already. We don't have a policy, we have a code. In our code, we have what frontage design allowances are, what people can do in front of their property, allowing for 5 inches of vegetation up until the edge of the road and higher vegetation going back. In Lloyden Park, we have sidewalks that are existing, but we don't have anything saying, for example, if you're rebuilding your house, if the sidewalk is in bad shape, you should fix it. Menlo, as a side example, Menlo Park has a threshold that if you're supposed to have sidewalk in a neighborhood and you don't have it, if you are doing more than, I think they call the 50% threshold of substantial, I think they call it substantial improvement. Just like when that threshold is crossed, you trigger fire sprinklers and other stuff with regards to your development. They trigger frontage improvements over there. I'm not saying that that's what we need. It's just directing staff to take a look at the different types of development that happens in town and whether or not any frontage improvements should be triggered and what those might be. And so we would take a look at the policy direction would be staff take a look and see if we should develop a policy or what kind of policy we may want to consider for future implementation. If that makes sense. Is it, all you're doing with this statement in the document is setting kind of an, I'll call it an overarching goal to take a look at this.
I'm in favor.
I feel. Now he explained it.
I would not want a resident to build a frontage that then has to be redone later. Having a design standard to accommodate future development makes sense, whatever that.
Love to see the policy come back and it's fleshed out. Not approving policy right now.
Not approving, saying
Look
come
at
back
it,
to
come
us
back.
with a policy idea. Fine. How do you guys feel about having this policy?
I can see a policy, but I can't see the fee. That's, so.
The
you know,
fee,
So
I don't-
I'm gonna say,
I don't
I'm
see a
gonna say
policy.
separate out the
Separate
fee.
or
Yeah.
If we
No.
separate them out, I can say, come back with a policy.
Don't-
Because I can say, oh, this is the way we want Atherton to have to look, and then you're going to build your place to cooperate with that. That makes sense. The other thing I would ask is if there are special situations like Atherton Ave, and all of a sudden there's an SB 1123 in the middle of it. Does that require a different kind of frontage than everything else? And then over here on the SB 79 properties, all of a sudden you have an SB 79 property next to an SB 1123 versus a single family home versus
SB
Well,
9.
that's
yeah,
not,
SB 9. Yeah.
but that's
Right.
out of our control.
No, I
in
know,
so
but
many
I'm- but
ways.
it-
That's
So,
that's
what's
gonna
it gonna
come
look
back to
like?
us.
So the simple answer is it's going to come back to you.
Oh, that's okay. I just want to make sure it gets to
The
that.
secondary part of that is that third policy statement for staff to try and develop some standards.
Yes.
Would take a look at each of those different things
Good.
and hopefully have some images that the council can opine on. Well, this works, this doesn't work. This meets our aesthetic, this doesn't.
Yeah.
And this goes in front of single family, this goes in front of multifamily, et cetera.
So I understand that what's being proposed is that staff would develop standards for where there are specific changes recommended in the active transportation plan. Staff would not be making suggestions for what that frontage would be where there aren't active transportation plan recommendations. This is not a town-wide thing.
That's
That's
I
going to
just-
be, I'll say, my simple comment is that the council will provide additional direction with regards to that. However, there are areas that, you say, I would like to develop standards that can be used for general improvement. And I'll give you an example. In Lloyden Park, there's sidewalks. driveways come up to the edge and it ramps down, and there's no flat area in that transition. We should have a standard for a driveway approach that allows and provides for the accessible path behind the ramp. It's not identified in the active transportation plan. However, it's a standard that we need. And so when I say we're going to develop standards, adoption of those is going to, the specific standard drawings we'll come back to you with, but we're going to want to discuss a menu of standards for feedback before they're adopted, so that we can learn. You can say, well, we don't want that standard. That's fine. But there are a variety of standards that may not necessarily be related to the active transportation plan, but maybe make it easier for folks that are doing improvements to say, well, I'm going to pull this standard drawing from the town and just use that to help me do my front. So for example, we have a standard for a swale.
Yeah, thank you.
Right? And for the concrete swale in front of the people's homes.
Swale.
Right? No, not that. No, but along Atherton Avenue, you see the concrete drainage swale. We have a standard of what that should look like. So it's kind of having those standards available for folks, for lack of a better way to put it.
Okay, Bill.
Yeah, so I understand in the areas where we've identified that we want to have certain things, there should be standards for how those get in. How they're paid for is another question. In my mind, we have standards for setbacks and things like that. They're not enforced. So making more unenforceable or unenforced standards, to me, doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. Other than, I understand with the driveway swales to make sure that you're getting the green infrastructure. I got no issue with that, but, it just depends on how far you're planning on going. I can envision way too far, which I don't support. But I'm part of a team, and so I will give my tacit approval at this point in time, but I've expressed some of my concerns already. And I want you to know there are very serious concerns about the payment. I think it's very unfair, the way you're proposing to do it, or at least that I've ascertained out of reading this. And I know that, Mona brought up, it's kind of like an impact fee. Well, we had an impact fee here at one time. Elizabeth and I both know well about that. And we got sued, and we ended up pulling that off. And so these impact fees may or may not hold water. So I would want to see a really good legal analysis on that so that we're not going through that same thing again. I realize other communities have impact fees, and they don't seem to get sued like it was suggested that we would get. But at the same time, we backed out. So I think that that's an additional analysis that needs to get done. Okay, because this is an impact fee, in my mind.
So, okay, so before we start talking about fees, it sounds like there's consensus of support for the first statement about the front. So now, Bill's not in favor of fees. Does anyone? I'll go first. I'm also not in favor of the fee. I think everyone benefits from pedestrian paths. I have a Atherton Avenue cul-de-sac, so I would have to pay this fee, but my next door neighbor who's on the cul-de-sac wouldn't. They're still going to use the path. So I'm not sure how this fee would work where it would be fair, because the whole point of these pedestrian paths is that they are benefiting the community as a whole. And I think having a fee that is tied to one home is not sure that feels equitable. I think that's what our general funds are for, personally. So.
Yeah, I agree that on an individual home basis that I don't agree with I am thinking that there needs to be something that's different about an SB 79 property, though.
Yeah.
SB 79 properties will require
I think all those state law, because they're all changing their setback requirements.
Right.
from-
Yeah.
Is it possible to, not target, but the SB 79 lots also have no parking requirements, so will have feasibly more pedestrian and it's closer to transit. So is there,
They are required to provide ADA paths of travel along their frontages.
okay, so that's already taken care of.
Good. So we don't have to do anything with it.
Multifamily.
Well,
For multifamily.
don't go too far.
Yeah.
If you would like to you can cross out the policy statement as you indicated, or simply just add the word multifamily in between new and development. And then you're focusing it on multifamily.
Yeah.
So either way works. If you want to delete the policy, that's fine, it doesn't matter. Or if you want to focus it more to those that have a larger scale impact and demand for facilities.
Should eliminate.
Both.
I'm in favor of
Let's see
that.
what it looks like.
Agree.
Yeah.
It describes what we're talking about, like SB 79 or multifamily.
Hearing the council, I heard a concern regarding the increased demand for those kinds of facilities from those developments, so I think that makes sense to have.
Okay.
Tied with the lack of parking requirements.
So it would be the language we have right now, but between new and development.
It's a suggestion.
Mona, does that work?
I'm sorry, I've had a hard time listening to hearing Robert.
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. My mic
Robert's
was
starting
off. I
to
just
swallow
noticed
his
that.
words.
So the suggestion
systems.
is revision of the policy statement number 2 to read, evaluate opportunities to create a development fee where new added multifamily development projects would contribute toward active transportation improvements such as accessible walking paths and biking facilities where appropriate.
And is allowed by law.
Not just contribute to, pay for.
And is allowed by law.
And if it's allowed by law, that's a
Just
caveat.
add it next to every policy.
What a little
always.
wiggle
Well,
worm
You,
she
you-
And then
you would
is.
we'll
have
never
to
get sued.
I mean, the policy as developed would have to comply.
Wiggle worm.
Well, some of them
Like it.
don't, and that's why they have to they go to court and they come back. Okay? I mean, come on, seriously.
Let's move
Okay.
on.
All
So how
right,
do we
so
have an
we
attorney
finished
here?
item 1, so you guys have enough direction,
And it's still
so
before midnight. so
look at
good
us
job.
go. All right, so number 2, update street design standards. Do you want to?
So I think as I was mentioning to the vice mayor, this is basically building out direction to staff to start developing standard drawings, call them menu options for different types of facilities within the public right of way, so that somebody that's doing frontage improvements of whatever kind can just kind of pull that and use it, whether that's related to green infrastructure, as Councilmember Whitmer mentioned, sidewalks, curb, gutter, and driveways for Lloyden Park and for multifamily projects, cleaning up the swale drawings and other things, coming up with what a walkway might look like that meets our aesthetic, so that as we develop things, we also know what we want them to look like.
I have a question.
Okay, questions first, then we'll do public comment again. Comments. So, got a question?
Question is, I think it's a good idea. What do you think?
Hey, I set that standard.
Elizabeth has a,
I have a question and I have a concern. These drawings that you will develop and put before the applicants and everything, will, Where will they come from? At the standard construction?
So
PSC, you know?
to simplify it, we would look at what others have as standard drawings. We would tailor them
Okay.
to what we think we need.
Yeah.
We would bring them forward
To the designers, yeah.
to you, and
Okay.
if
My
to
concern
look
is-
at them
okay.
before they get adopted, for sure.
Understand. So my concern is that we are going to start looking cookie cutter like every other city, town in the nation. And I don't want it to end up looking like a Midwestern.
No, so I think
Do
the
you see what I'm
appropriate
saying?
thing is to develop context-sensitive standards that work for us.
Okay.
And what happens is contractors will come into the building department
Mhm.
with a set of plans,
Mhm.
and the building official will say, hey, you need some specifications on your plan for driveways, for swales, for green infrastructure. They look to the building staff and say, hey, you have a specification for
Yeah,
that?
so they're going
And
to
then we'll
hand that
just-
and then they're going to install it and it's going to be a cookie cutter thing that's not going to
They're
look like an
asking for what the
Atherton
town would
town.
approve.
We're going to
Yeah.
ruin the look and feel of our town doing this.
So let me give you an example. Okay, so if we have a walkway that we ultimately figure out where we're going to put it on in Atherton Avenue. If, I think I brought to the last meeting kind of a sample of.
Oh, that's terrible.
Huh?
That those little pebbles that are glued together.
No
They
one likes
fall
those, by the
apart.
way.
Okay, so it's simply an example. We will look at alternatives, but we can further say this is a standard. However, we can still provide flexibility within that standard to allow for an alternate accessible treatment to the aesthetic of the property owner. And so one of those examples could be like what's in front of, I think it's 202 Atherton. They put the pavers, it's a walkway. And as long as it complies with general requirements, we can provide that flexibility within that standard. And so I'm not going to dictate I'm not ready to say what something is going to look like now. That's going to be a process that we all go through together.
Okay, Rick and then.
Okay, so we're discussing update street design standards, statement of policy. You and George have both referred to driveways, fit swale, infrastructure. This language is quite specific, only to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. That doesn't include swales and driveways. So I don't have any problem with staff coming back. Well, so where are we going here? Are we following what's in the staff report, or is there something much broader?
So he's going to be doing something much broader, and you'll see all of that. But this is the active transportation plan, so that's kind of focused on bicycle and pedestrian standards as part of that larger.
So what's on the agenda tonight is just the active transportation plan, so it's only related to pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure.
Will ultimately larger document that takes everything. Okay, Bill, unless you had another.
No, I have a comment, but I can wait.
Okay, my question is, has there been any analysis done on how much all this is going to cost? Redoing all these drawings, looking at what other cities are doing, putting it all together. You know, there's a lot of work here.
I have a great associate engineer, and she actually started thinking about this and kind of started sketching some of this up. We anticipate that most of this will be done by staff. So we're not looking to hire an outside firm to help us.
And have to hire an additional person to do what the other person was doing? Because now they're doing this? I guess that's the question. For
Not
an
at this
intern
point.
or something like that?
Not at this point. I think that
The
I
answer is
think that
no.
we believe that we can do that.
Yeah, well, I
within
certainly hope
our
so,
current
but
capability.
I know that people think we have a lot of money, but if we remember back on our drainage discussion, I mean, that's a $7 to $10 million investment that we don't even have in the budget yet. So, you know, we don't have a lot of money.
So are there any more questions before I take public comment on part 2, update street design standards on this part so we could get to the
You're doing a
comments.
great job.
Thank you, guys. I'm really working hard here. Anyone? Anyone? Oh, come on up.
Um, I felt I was watching a game of tennis here. So I thought I'm going to play both sides. I think that, yes, in general, this is a good idea because there are certain things that standards I think apply to well, and having something you could just hand across the counter is a great idea. I will also agree with Elizabeth Lewis that if the standards sound like a standard as opposed to you can pick one of these if you like, and by the way, the street you're working on is this, and maybe they'd like to fit in with this, which could include doing nothing, right? Then you could avoid this effect. But I don't know how you can prevent the effect that you might be concerned about.
But, you know, I have to say they did have here to protect the town's semi-rural character. So you did
By the
put
way,
that
the
in.
next one is the lighting. So you already spoke about
Let's
that.
stay on what we're.
Come on, come speak.
Patty Levers, resident of Lindenwood and president of the Lindenwood Homes Association. I just want to say I appreciate you looking at this anyway. Right now in Lindenwood, and I'm sure that's other parts of Atherton, we're really concerned about the safety of the shrubbery and all these things that are impeding upon the road. Sorry, my brain is numb from all the pickleball. It's impeding upon the roadways, making it really unsafe. And I don't know whether it's just a matter of enforcing the present things we have on the books, or looking at a safer pedestrian path in our roadways, because we have a lot of people that are pedestrians and cars, and a lot of the older homes who haven't conformed to the regulations we have now, it's just it makes it an unsafe situation. So I really do appreciate looking at solutions to this problem. So
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
For
Patty.
your comments. I agree.
Okay, any other comment to our comment? Okay, great. Okay.
So I understand what's being proposed, and in general, I think it's good. I share Elizabeth's concern, but I think we would be able to, the proposed standards would, so we could be able to address that. My question is, currently, where there isn't a drainage channel next to a roadway, like along Linda Vista or in some of the areas along Monte Vista, there, you know, historically was just a little ditch. When a new property is built, or maybe a property is substantially remodeled, they often put in a concrete channel there in front of their property. And I don't know if that's required, because that's kind of along the lines of what you're suggesting right now. And so therefore we have a standard that we're asking those property or requiring those property owners to put in the right of way, or if that's just entirely elective by that property.
I'd say 90% of them are elective. And so with regards to Linda Vista, in addition to putting the concrete swale, they actually have a pipe culvert underneath it because there was a ditch that they're compensating for. And so a lot of folks are putting in hardened swales across their entire frontage. Others are keeping the more natural, more natural shaped swale in their frontage area, but putting in the more hardened swale just at the driveways to get the
Right.
water across.
And so what's it? The driveway is required as part of, no, it's all.
No, we
elective.
require that you keep and maintain water to flow across the front of your property. And so you can, in some areas, build a dip in the middle of your driveway so that the water comes from your neighbor and flows across your property. Others have filled in that area a little bit and the water is running more directed along the street, like on Atherton Avenue. The exception to that is on steeper streets, it's more of a roll curb rather than the flatter swale.
But what is done in front of one's property is essentially a lake. That's what you're saying.
Mostly, people are picking their aesthetic for a lot of stuff, and some want that concrete swale in front and some don't.
I would think that a concrete swale would not be ecologically acceptable for drainage, you know, because it's not a pervious.
Yeah, so that's why our
drainage
current
infrastructure.
standards for full site developments that trigger stormwater treatment, they're actually taking the water from the road and treating that water and bringing it back. So it's being compensated for.
And that would be a standard that we would try and develop.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
I'm in favor of this policy. My comment really quick and done.
I am too.
Great.
Go.
2.
I'll support it.
Okay, great.
Order too, but are we talking about bicycle pedestrian or all the conversation?
Well, for this
Bicycle
document,
pedestrian.
it's bike and pedestrian,
Okay,
but
got
when
it.
it comes back to us, it'll
It
be
may,
more.
it may
Right, I
expand.
just want to make sure that that's clear.
It's coming back.
Well,
It all comes back to us.
One day.
Right,
Okay.
that's 3, there's not a 4, so we're
Cool.
done.
We've got consensus for this policy statement. So now on to 3, daylighting. If Robert, you want to some facts.
Okay, so this is an optional policy for inclusion. The state law is the state law. It prohibits people from parking within, I think, 20 feet approaching a crosswalk. And the intent of the statement is to look and see whether or not the town should develop any sort of policy around that to make it easier for folks to be aware of it and or comply and or enforce, right? Because ultimately it's an enforcement issue in terms of preventing people from parking all the way up to the corner. And so it's telling us whether or not we want to take a look at developing any sort of policy around that state law to help facilitate those things.
Does anyone have any questions before we open for public comment and comments?
I have a question.
Yep.
Do we have the option to make it at certain thoroughfare places that as opposed to like across the town?
So you have the option of what it looks like on certain thoroughfare places, but the state law applies across the board.
Yeah, and I understand the state law, but in terms of our ordinance or our action here, would it be a situation where we could say along within 20 feet of El Camino Real or within 20 feet of Middlefield, you know, whatever the major thoroughfares are that we focus on, or do we have to put it in across the town? I know it's enforceable across the town.
Yeah, so that would be something that could be looked at as to how you want to enact any sort of policy. I think that you can take a look at where priority locations might be based on those certain thoroughfares, that these are our priorities as we develop that policy. With regards to, say, for example, El Camino, I think that as that design develops, that stuff's going to naturally flow into how it gets integrated into that design. But
I'm just thinking about it from a safety standpoint alone.
yeah. Well, from the safety standpoint, you may advise PD, well, it's really important from a safety standpoint that we highlight enforcement in these areas, for example.
Right.
But I can't tell you that if there's no curb, there's no curb. We're not doing that. You can say, so that, so I can.
Bill has a question.
Mayor, this is,
Yes,
Yeah.
go
I
ahead,
had a
go ahead,
question on
Elizabeth.
this from
Go
the
ahead,
beginning.
go ahead.
Okay. All right.
I'll go
Elizabeth.
next
Okay.
after you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, will this be including construction vehicles or large vehicles that impede the line of sight for making a left-hand turn? Or is it just in front of like crosswalks?
So the state law is, I understand, is that if you have a crosswalk marked or unmarked, 20 feet approaching that, you're not supposed to park. It doesn't matter if you're a construction truck
So
or if,
it's crosswalks, but what about intersections?
Mhm.
Coming up Elena to Atherton Avenue, going to take a left on Atherton Avenue, Alameda, there's a ginormous construction truck parked right there. You cannot get around it. You cannot see it because it's big and it's parked right at the corner.
that's illegal.
Well,
So it theoretically, it's an enforcement issue.
Call the police.
But,
Enforcement.
you know,
And
we have to enforce
so
this.
I'll give you an example. Part of that policy can be policy comes back, right? Could be a reminder as part of the COP for the construction projects that this area is marked as a no, if you have a corner, you're not allowed to park up to the corner.
Do you have to require the developer to put out cones or?
Well, if
I asked him, maybe put it out.
Okay, Mona's trying to speak.
So there's two separate issues, right? The first one is intersections, which, as the vice mayor has indicated, if someone is stopping in close proximity to an intersection and it is conflicting with traffic, then that is a violation of the vehicle code, and police can come and cite them pursuant to Vehicle Code Section 22,500. With respect to the crosswalk issue, the general rule is that you cannot park or leave unattended a vehicle within 20 feet of a crosswalk. There's two exceptions to that. And if you recall, when we were establishing speed limits a few months ago, if there is a traffic study that the town's professional consultant prepared, and it showed why we needed to do a different distance than 20 feet, then we could, by ordinance, establish a different, a shorter, rather than 20 feet, 15 feet or so forth, or larger if necessary, of course. But those are kind of the exceptions to that. And so the state law is the general rule. Everyone has to comply with it. It becomes an enforcement issue, but if you wished, we could deviate that if we did, if we made a finding supported by a transportation plan and traffic study that shows that we need to do different traffic safety standards.
Okay, Bill's been very patient.
So, how many parking tickets do we give out on an average over the year?
It's been all Maple and Asheville. Last month was 30. The majority of those were on Maple.
So how do you feel about this daylighting implementation, taking the state law and making it our law?
So the daylighting or the intersection?
No, the daylighting in total,
Yes, sir.
which is primarily about.
Daylighting.
And I'm sorry, your question to me?
How do you feel about it?
Feel
How
that
do you
you're-
feel? Do you feel we should be implementing it into our code, or do you feel
No, I
the
think
way
that
it
we
is
should. I
now?
think it's a safety issue. I know that the Bike Transportation Committee has brought that up before as a safety matter.
Okay, well, when we do it, then we have to enforce it. I guess that's my
And
two
that's
cents
understood.
too.
Yep. We have the capability to do that.
Does it require an ordinance to do that, or can you just use state law to do it?
Through state law.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do we need to have a law on the books then?
We're looking at council priorities. When we bring the policies back, it's talking about council priorities, not an ordinance.
Okay, well, a priority would be if we don't have to pass something, then we shouldn't have to do it if it can be enforced anyway.
And then
That
Rick
should
has
be
a
a
question.
priority for me. Extra paper, I
My
mean.
question is, in the statement here, it says that the law is that you can't park or leave an unattended vehicle within 20 feet of a marked or unmarked crosswalk. I get that. That's exactly what Mona just said, subject to the adjustment, but let's just go with what the general rule is. And then it says, or within 15 feet of any crosswalk where a curb extension is present. I don't,
Okay,
that's
so-
obviously less than 20.
State law allows for a shortening of that distance if, I think, another word for a curb extension is a bulb out. So you may be familiar with that, like in the other downtown areas or whatever, where you have parking and then the sidewalk kind of bulbs at the corner.
Oh, yeah.
And so it allows you to park a little closer
I see.
because the sidewalk extends further closer to the street and
Because of the
Be-
bulb out. No,
yeah, so the
That's the-
pedestrian's not as hidden. And so it allows for the shortening of that distance because the pedestrian is brought towards, is able to get closer to the street before crossing.
To allow for that, we need an ordinance? Or
We don't
that's
need an
just state-
ordinance.
Okay.
This is, the question is whether or not the council wants us to develop any sort of policies around this with regards to how we might facilitate compliance, for lack of a better way to put it. And if the answer is no, that's fine.
I'd like to take
Wait, before we do, let's do public comment for part 3, daylighting, our final public comment for this item. Anyone?
And we're done.
prioritization.
No, of this part of the item, then we, yeah. So, nope, okay, great, comments. Elizabeth said she's in favor of this back in front of the council. Does anyone else want to?
I don't see the purpose of it. So, I mean, somebody, from our discussion, I haven't heard anything that says it's a priority for us. It could be something in terms of the police force priority, in terms of what the safety issue, enforcing state law, but I don't see it council priority.
Anything, if state law applies, and he can enforce the state law as it is. I have an extra page.
Okay, we got 3 people saying no.
All right.
There we go. Great. All right, now we are moving on to prioritization part of the
Okay.
active transportation plan.
Thank you. So attached to your document was the initial recommended prioritization for scoring of projects within the active transportation plan. Ultimately, the scoring would be drafted, reviewed by staff, and put out for public review and comment before you adopt it. Some feedback we received was that if, just because an item historically had been in a plan, maybe it doesn't necessarily deserve extra points. And so what we can do is take those 10 points and kind of shuffle them around. And so one of the recommendations is to keep some of those points in that same funding and implementation area and move it to public support. So right now, public support is scored at 15 and cost at 5, and then that 10-point allowance within the existing, within the old plan. So we can take those 10 and shift them 5 and 5 to cost and to public support as one option. Alternatively, we can take 5 and move it up to the safety category, which already has a 40-point window on it. So it kind of maybe pushes it. I guess safety is a priority, and so it's scored that way. But I don't know if we want to overweight it, for lack of a better way to put it.
Each goal area.
Each goal area has a total. So we have safety and comfort is 40, access and connectivity and multimodal access is 30, and then funding and implementation is the other 30. And so we can keep those 10 points within that last category just by splitting it up between cost and with public support.
How are you measuring public support?
Getting rid of this one. It's taking 10 points.
So
5 of them.
as we've gone through all of our public
Just on this
outreach
page.
efforts, it's basically looking at, do we have a net positive support for this project? Do we have an excess net positive? Do we have a higher net positive? And so that's really making sure that some of these got 2 people net positive, some got 10 net positive, and so it's just kind of giving some weight to that.
So we'll just use past survey data. We're not going to do another round.
That's correct. We've done
Yeah.
about 3 rounds of outreach already, so I think we're good with the outreach that we've done for setting this. Again, the prioritization ultimately will be in a public document for folks to say, well, this one really should be higher or whatever.
This every 5 years, this plan will be updated
That's
and there'll
correct.
be a new survey. So
Yep.
should reflect. Okay.
I have a comment.
Oh, okay. Questions first. Anybody else have
Question.
No questions.
questions? All right. Public comment.
Ross.
People put stickers on.
We're good.
That's right.
Okay. Is there anyone online? Okay, we're closing public comment. Bill had his hand up first, then.
All right, so I looked through these lists. I've discussed them with George. You know, when you look at the street safety, you say, well, okay, has there been an accident there? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, then you've got to look at the facts with regards to how the accident occurred, who was really at fault, those type of things, before you say we need to stop people driving down the road because somebody got hit by a car because they ran out in front of it. On the comfort on walking in the street, well, that's like a matter of taste. I may be very comfortable walking down the street and somebody else may not. And so it's a question as to who you ask and what the situation was. And then there's the reference on going back to the 2014 bike and pedestrian plan. Well, guess what? That was 12 years ago. I don't think we should be referencing that at all with regards to adding points to something to decide if we're going to move forward. This is 2026. And so when I read what they gave us or what was included in this plan, I just think that there's a little more refinement that needs to be done here other than just take what Alta gave us because they're biased. They love the work that they did before and they love the work that, they're regurgitating a lot of it now. And they've taken a few newer pieces of information. But I think that we need to put some more refinement in there. And if you're going to come back with that type of refinement, then I'm all for it. If you're just going to go with what's here, then I'm not for it.
Do you have any specifics of what you want to see added that's not?
Well, I just mentioned the collision or type of activity, accidents and things like that. What are the facts of the accident? Who was really at fault? Okay. Don't blame the driver if the driver wasn't really at fault. As I said before, the stress and the comfort walking down the street, go out and look at the streets where we're saying, it's uncomfortable. Uncomfortable for who? And then lastly, like I said, referring to, to a 12-year-old plan and saying we're going to use that as the basis for starting to assess up to 25 or 15 points doesn't make any sense to me because things have changed. And so anyway, that's my 2 cents in a nutshell. I mean, I could go into more detail, but I don't want to waste everybody's time.
Okay.
Okay, so staff is proposing that we remove the 2014 bicycle and pedestrian plan reference and move those 10 points within funding and implementation by splitting them the other 2. I think it's a good suggestion. I have absolutely no problem with staff coming back with a more refined and comprehensive project prioritization matrix, which is actually what Bill is suggesting. But given what's on the agenda tonight, I think that removing the bicycle and pedestrian master plan references 10 points and moving that within the funding and implementation for a start is a very good thing.
I think for a future plan, having it like in 5 years, having past plans, once this thing's being refreshed often, I think having that number in there makes sense. The 2014 plan is so old, but I think moving forward, it does make sense to factor in plans that have been long
If we're
planned,
closer.
much delayed,
Yeah.
if we're reviewing and more often. Okay, go for it.
So my comment is, when you refer to the comfort of walking down a street, if, there are streets that people want to walk down, and it's dangerous because there's no place for them to walk on the sides of the road. They walk in the road, and there are cars. And cars, I have to tell you, cars these days are going so fast. I don't know. I just wish that we had more police officers to, witness the way that these drivers are driving on our small little avenues and lanes. And there's babies being pushed and bicycles. And I haven't seen so many more e-bikes recently with the young guys riding, frantically. But I do think that we need to look at how we can make our streets and avenues and lanes a little bit safer and more walkable, because we have a town, everybody loves to walk. They walk, they jog, they, talk. There's gaggles of young women that meet and they walk every morning. There's just not enough, safety. So that what we can do, how we can address that is important.
Yeah, so I'm not quite clear. You guys have a lot more history of this than I do. What the difference between a 13 at one category and a 12, and I don't know what that does in terms of weighting it. But I would say that the only thing I reacted to, the two things I reacted to are the two things that have been commented on. I thought the weighting for the bicycle portion didn't need to be there. But I also think walking down the streets, in virtually every street I walk on, is not a safe thing. And when I was walking with my grandson, I was thinking it's really not safe. And there's all kinds of people walking around. I mean, just go walk down Fair Oaks to my house, and see how many times it comes close. Not only are the vehicles fast, they're also big.
Yes,
and they can't see because the front of an SUV is so high.
All right.
So I would think that if I were going to put anything, 5 more extra points, I'd put some 5 extra points there. But those two areas struck me as stand out as not quite weighted.
How do you measure the level of stress on a road? I mean, this must be an official term and not just like vibes.
It is an official term. And so the level of stress really is measured based on the speed of traffic along a roadway and how close the cyclist or pedestrian might be to that traffic. And it is we call it, for lack of a better way to put it, some form of measurement of comfort that somebody that is a novice, let's say on cycling, how comfortable they would feel riding cycling on that roadway. I do want to say that this is a metric to try and rank projects which you've already talked about. So all of the various projects that were discussed in the bike portion of the master plan, which I think there are only a couple things. Pedestrians, there's only a handful of pedestrian routes, and other improvements. And this is a way to try and take those and help put them in a priority order. And so, as indicated before, and reiterated by the council, referring to a document that's 12 plus years old in terms of what the priorities were back then doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. And so that's why we're recommending taking that and moving those points. Ultimately, we'll take this, the consultant take this information, and one of the tricky things is taking a look at those projects and coming up with that rough order of magnitude cost, which has a little bit of a factor in terms of where those things are going to rank.
That's a little.
Okay. So,
That's good.
so you guys have enough direction on this one? Everyone's
So-
packing up their stuff, so it sounds like
I'm not
everyone's
doing it.
done.
I'm not doing it this time. I'm
adjourned.
sitting here
You're good
just
job.
enjoying.
Way to
I
go.
didn't pack my stuff
All
up a
right.
half hour ago.
Okay. All right. So thank you. We'll adjourn the meeting.
By the way, that